Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Viktor Frankl. ____. 10.000x investment multiplier system. Requirement for system integration. Minimum of 0.1 affection, 1/3. The evening sky glowed orange as the sun set, its rays reflecting off the roof of a small bungalow building in an urban neighborhood. In front of this building was a limousine and 5 people. Here is the house key deed, the key, and $10,000. The Ashford family will no longer have anything to do with you as of this moment. Do we understand each other? Dexter opened his mouth. The butler didn't wait for Dexter to speak, nor did he offer a parting glance. He simply stepped back into the black limousine, leaving nothing behind but the faint smell of premium exhaust. Dexter stood there, staring blankly. He looked down at the key in his palm. It was faded and worn, as though 100 people had used it. Dexter was born into the wealthy Ashford family by a slave mother who died during childbirth. To make matters worse, he was born with an F-rank mana affinity which he would never become a hero and was destined to be a nobody. He was hidden away and abandoned, treated like a slave in the Ashford family where he was supposed to be royalty until today when he signed the condition for his freedom from the family. He didn't know what it was, but he was desperate to escape the family's influence, so he signed the contract. But how could he have known that the condition was getting married to the 3 famous cripples in the entire city? He turned around and behind him were 3 women dressed in white wedding gowns. When he married them 30 minutes ago, it still felt like he was living in a nightmare, escaping one family only to be involved with 3 other families. Did I jump from frying pan straight into fire? He hated this situation. He had been helpless all his life, finally escaping only to be tied down once more. It was hell. He turned around to finally take a look at his 3 wives. The lady who was in a wheelchair, in the middle of the others, is called Mira Calloway. From the wealthy Calloway family, she's permanently paralyzed from the neck down. She has flaming red hair, crimson eyes, and a tiny mole beneath her nose. She looked like the picture-perfect painting of a sun goddess as she sat there with a blank expression on her face. 3 years ago, she was called the Crimson Valkyrie, born with an S-rank mana affinity and an A-rank Crimson Flameheart talent. She battled monsters through countless dungeons, becoming one of the youngest B-rank heroes in the city. However, tragedy struck when 3 families joined forces to explore a wild S-rank dungeon under the Ashford family's jurisdiction. Due to a grave miscalculation by the Ashford family, the dungeon was classified as S-rank when it was, in fact, an SSS-rank dungeon. The expedition ended in catastrophe, leaving her crippled and her meridians completely shattered. To Myra's left stood a tall, slender woman with dark hair cascading past her shoulders. The second wife, Lyra Vance of the influential Vance family, was once a prodigy in her own right. Born with B-rank mana affinity, she had awakened an A-rank ability known as Shadow World, and rose rapidly to become one of the fastest individuals to attain C-rank hero status. Since it was a joint family expedition, it included her family. She had been present in the dungeon alongside Mira when the incident occurred. Since then, her vocal cords had been ruptured and her eardrums destroyed, leaving her unable to speak or hear. In her prime, she was known as Orlix, the Shadow Saintess. It was rumored that she has 2 faces. She could be smiling at you and then next second wish to kill you just like that. At this moment, she currently stared at Dexter with an unreadable expression, just as one would stare at a strange painting. To Myra's right stood the third lady, Celine Frost from the prestigious Frost noble family. Born with an A-rank mana affinity and S-rank Eternal Ice Winter ability. She became an A-rank hero and also was in the same SSS rank dungeon when she became blind and chronically ill. Celine's skin was pale, almost translucent, and she wore a thin cardigan over her wedding dress that did nothing to hide how much she was shaking. They must be freezing. That was his first thought. He walked to the rusty iron gate, fumbled with the key, and finally got it open. He went to the women. He moved behind Myra's wheelchair first. Then he reached out and gently caught the hem of Celine's sleeve. "It's cold out here. Let's head inside." His voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. The moment his fingers touched her sleeve, Celine flinched as she yanked her arm away. Dexter's jaw tightened and he frowned. What the hell? He could feel the evening cold through his suit, which meant she had to be freezing. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a curtain twitch in the house across the street, which meant that the neighbors were already watching. If someone took a photo of them and posted it on the internet, this place would turn into something else. Since I can't touch her, maybe Lyra would. He said in thought and then brought out his phone, opened the Notes app, and typed in a big font. Take her hand. Let's head inside. It's too cold. He held the screen in front of Lyra's face. Her dark eyes focused on the text, then looked up at Dexter. She stared at him for what seemed to be a minute and then slowly nodded. Then she stepped toward Celine. Her hand hovered near Celine's arm for a moment. Celine seemed to have noticed it. She brought her arm forward and Lyra's fingers settled around Celine's wrist. Dexter sighed and then gripped the handles of Myra's wheelchair. He wheeled her up the path, while Lyra guided Celine behind them in silence. The front door got stuck, making Dexter put his shoulder into it to open. The smell of dust and old wood escaped the house. He tapped at the wall with his fingers and found the switch, lighting up the entire house. The bungalow was small but structurally sound. A previous owner had left behind 3 sagging sofas, an old television, a wooden dining table with 5 chairs, and a shelf of dusty paperbacks. The wallpaper was also peeling at the corners. He left the 3 women in the living room and went to check the bedrooms. It was 2 rooms. One was slightly larger than the other. Each contained a bed frame with a bed, a nightstand, and a window with iron bars and dirty curtains. 2 rooms and 4 people. Dexter thought. It would be logical for 2 people to sleep in one room, but nothing about this night was logical. I can only use the small room. Merge the 2 beds together for the 3 of them to sleep. The beds were large enough for 2 people to sleep on, so 2 combined beds should be more than enough to house the 3 women. He found some extra blankets in a closet that smelled like mothballs and spread them out to cover the gap between the mattresses. His own room was now empty. Luckily, he found a hand-crank air mattress in a storage closet, pumped it up, and threw a blanket over it. This should be all right for tonight. Tomorrow I will make other arrangements, Dexter muttered to himself. When he returned to the living room, the girls were exactly where he'd left them. No one had moved an inch, just like Barbie dolls. I set up the beds, he said, leaning against the doorframe. You guys can head in and get some sleep. Dexter was about to leave when he saw no one answered him. He frowned in frustration. Why aren't they? And then it hit him. One couldn't hear him, the other couldn't see, and the third couldn't move. Dexter gritted his teeth and without a word, he turned and walked back to his bedroom. He needed 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to sit in silence and not think about the fact that he had been disowned, married to 3 strangers, and left in a crumbling house with $10,000 and no plan. About an hour later he came back. He had washed his face with cold water from the kitchen tap and had calmed down a bit. He typed a new note on his phone. Let's go to bed. Bring Celine with you. I'll handle Mira. He held it in front of Lyra. Her eyes focused once more. Then she looked at him, making Dexter a bit uncomfortable, but she eventually nodded her head. She went to Celine and guided her toward the bedroom, one hand on Celine's elbow, the other on the small of her back. Dexter walked over to Mira. She was still in her wheelchair. She hadn't looked at him once since the wedding. He crouched in front of her. I'm going to pick you up now. Her eyes trembled, but she said nothing as Dexter lifted her up. She was really light, as though she hadn't been eating. He carried her through the doorway and into the bedroom. Lyra had already settled Celine on the far side of the bed. He lowered Mira on the empty side of the bed. Myra's head suddenly turned as she looked directly at him for the first ever. Her ember eyes were extremely dull. You know, she suddenly spoke. Her voice was like 1,000 sirens singing. It's our wedding night. Dexter was at first stunned. Not because of her voice, but because one of them was finally willing to speak to him. He glanced at her and said nothing. She continued, You can do whatever you want of me. I'm completely paralyzed and won't be able to resist you at all. Dexter was stunned. I still don't know whether to be happy now that I've finally escaped my family, or be sad that I've gotten entangled with 3. Right now, he was feeling something, but it was definitely not lust. But now that she mentioned it, Dexter felt heat crawl up the back of his neck. But he kept his face still. Mira, of course, she saw it. Her lips curled into a cold smile. Or, did you want all 3 of us? Don't worry. One is blind and won't know if you're small. And the other can see everything, but she can't tell a soul. Mira chuckled coldly. Convenient, isn't it? On the far side of the bed, Celine reached into her sleeve to pull out a slightly bruised apple, and began to munch on it gently. Dexter rolled his eyes. Save the reverse psychology, he said flatly. I wasn't planning on anything. Even if I wanted to do it, it certainly won't be with someone who can't move. The room suddenly went silent and a flicker of amusement flashed in Myra's eyes. Celine had stopped chewing as she froze there on the bed. Dexter exhaled through his nose and rubbed the back of his neck. I don't plan to do anything to you guys either. I like my women taking the initiative, so just sleep. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow. He didn't wait for a response. He hit the light switch, plunging the room into darkness, and closed the door. Dexter rested in his room, massaging his forehead. How the hell am I supposed to take care of 3 people when I can barely take care of myself? When fate hands you 3 lemons, make 3 cups of lemonade. Dale Carnegie. Dexter tried sleeping, but it refused to claim him, just like his father. Eventually, he ended up cultivating through the night. The starlight meditation technique extracts mana from the sun and the stars to increases one's cultivation level. Hero levels are graded: Awakened Hero, also called Meta Heroes, 1 to 12, Superhero, 1 to 12, Ultra Hero, 1 to 12, Transcendent, Initial, Mid, Advance, Peak, Supreme, Initial, Mid, Advance, Peak, and Legend. But Dexter possesses the lowest mana affinity, F rank, even comparable to an ordinary human. Absorbing mana to him is like trying to catch a fish with greasy hands. Mana slips away. But the meditation itself had another benefit. It clears one's mind. By the time it was morning, he felt relaxed, calm, and refreshed. He stood up and stretched. Pop! His spine popped. Then he went to the bathroom. The hot water thankfully worked. He turned the tap and let it run until steam curled up from the basin, fogging the mirror. He brushed, showered quickly, dressed in a gray t-shirt and dark joggers, then padded to the kitchen on bare feet. The kitchen was small and outdated, but functional. He opened the cupboards, found rice, a few eggs, some dried mushrooms, and a bottle of soy sauce. Then he remembered the wedding gift boxes still out in the entrance. Luckily, they had a gate. He dragged them into the kitchen and started unpacking. Most of it was useless jewelry. He found practical items, though. Bags of dried grains, canned soups, instant noodles, tea, and a small container of brown sugar. He cooked rice porridge with dried mushrooms and soft-boiled egg on the side. While it simmered, he set the small dining table. 4 bowls, 4 spoons, 4 cups of hot tea. Then he went to the master bedroom. The door was open and Mira was already in her wheelchair, parked near the window, staring at nothing. Her hair was tangled around her face, and her wedding dress was wrinkled. Celine was still in bed, lying on her back, her eyes open and fixed on the ceiling, looking like she hadn't moved all night. Lyra was sitting upright at the edge of the mattress, with her hands folded neatly in her lap. Dexter typed on his phone and held it out to Lyra. Breakfast is ready. Can you help Celine to the table? Lyra read the message, but instead of nodding, she hesitated. She raised one hand and pointed a slender finger at her own mouth. Dexter blinked in confusion. What? She pointed again. Oh, sorry. They hadn't brushed their teeth, washed their faces, or bathed yet. He pressed his lips together and typed. Hold on. 2 minutes. Going back to the gift boxes and dug through them. Toothbrushes still in packaging. Toothpaste. 2 bars of soap. A bottle of lotion. A comb. He gathered everything up, carried it to the bedroom and set it on the nightstand. He unpackaged an electric toothbrush, applied toothpaste, and held it out to Lyra. She took it. Their fingers briefly brushed, and it was ice cold, making Dexter raise an eyebrow. Gave Celine another and then turned to Mira. "Open your mouth." Myra's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? Open your mouth. You can't just..." Mid-sentence, Dexter slid the toothbrush between her teeth and flicked it on. Myra's eyes went wide, then narrowed into a glare so sharp it could have cut diamond. She sat there with indignation as toothpaste foam was gathering at the corner of her lips. Dexter felt happy for shutting her up and grinned. He held up a small basin. "Spit." She spat hard, making a bit of foam splash and land on his wrist. "I thought you might prefer your women to swallow," Mira said with disdain. "Guess I was wrong." Dexter was stunned. "This girl is crazier than I thought." He shook his head and brought a bottle of water to her mouth. "Rinse." She smirked but opened her mouth to drink the water and rinsed, then spat it out. He took the toiletries to the bathroom, washed his hands, and came back. He stood in front of her wheelchair and asked, "Do you need help with the restroom? Or do you want to bathe first?" Mira didn't look at him. She stared at the wall beside her. "I'm paralyzed, in case you hadn't noticed. Or do you see a pair of working legs I don't know about?" Dexter chuckled. "We'll tell Lyra to assist you." Dexter was about to leave when he heard a small voice. Don't." Dexter stopped dead in his tracks and frowned. "What does she mean by don't? Does she actually want me to do it myself? Hell no." She had practically called him a pervert last night. If he did this, he would be a true pervert in her eyes. He was about to reject, but as he saw her sitting unmoving, face down and looking all sad. "Ah, fuck me." He cursed in his mind and inhaled sharply, unlocked Myra's wheelchair and pushed her through the hallway. The bathroom was small with a toilet, a sink, and an old cast-iron bathtub with clawed feet. He'd scrubbed it earlier that morning while the water was heating. "Toilet or bathtub first?" She replied in a quiet voice. "Toilet." She was still wearing the wedding dress. Dexter knelt in front of her, wrapped one arm around her waist, and lifted. Her body pressed against his chest and it was warm. He could feel breasts and even count her ribs through the cloth. Dexter's expression didn't change, and with his free hand, he found the zipper at the back of her dress and pulled it down. Underneath, she wore a plain sports bra and cotton briefs. Her skin was pale, milky, and ungodly smooth. "Do you like what you see?" Her voice cracked slightly. Dexter scoffed. "I've seen thousands of beautiful women on Cornhub. What makes you think yours is special?" "Why you?" Myra's face flushed red in anger, but Dexter suddenly removed her panties and placed her securely on the toilet so she wouldn't fall. "I'm going to step out now, just call me when you're done." He pulled the door halfway shut and left to pick up underwear and a dress for her. He saw a flowery gown and smiled. "Perfect." About 15 minutes later, Mira spoke in a quiet voice. "I'm done." Dexter entered. He wouldn't let his gaze linger anywhere it shouldn't and pressed the button on the smart toilet. The water hissed and Mira stared strangely at it, but she said nothing. When she was clean, Dexter lifted her again and suddenly unclasped her sports bra, keeping his gaze fixed firmly on the tile above her head, and gently lowered her into the warm water. He washed her hands first, her arms, her shoulders, and her legs, lathering shampoo into her scalp, rinsing it with a cup. She sat in the tub with her eyes closed, her face turned away, her ears burning red. He lifted her out, wrapped her in a towel and patted her dry. Then he picked up the flowery sundress he'd found in her luggage. "I hate this dress," Mira said. Her voice was tight. Dexter smirked. "I know. That's why I picked it." Mira instantly glared daggers at him. But she couldn't stop him and could only watch as he put it on her. He helped her back into the wheelchair and pushed her to the kitchen table. Meanwhile, Lyra had successfully helped Celine wash up in the other bathroom, and the two of them were already seated. Dexter ladled the hot porridge into 4 bowls. Lyra gently took Celine's hand, guiding her fingers to the handle of the spoon until Celine was able to eat on her own. Mira took a small bite, chewed slowly, and looked up. "It doesn't actually taste half bad." Dexter raised an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? Don't push your luck, she retorted drily and went back to eating. They ate in silence, but it was too late when Dexter realized Lyra had consumed more than 4 people's worth of porridge. How's this possible? Her body is so thin. Where did all that food go? He was stunned. Lyra noticed him staring and she glanced with her causal expression. But a flush crept up her neck. She was embarrassed but didn't want to show. That was supposed to be our lunch. He shook his head and grabbed his phone, typing. It was supposed to be lunch, but it's all right. I will cook more now. He held the screen out to her. She read it and looked up at him, then hesitantly nodded. After breakfast, Dexter cleared the table and started washing dishes. The great heir of the Ashford family, washing dishes. Myra's voice sounded out as she mocked. Dexter rinsed a bowl and set it on the rack. I'm sure you and your family were quite shocked when you realized I was the one you married and not the legitimate heir. Can't believe the 3 great families got scammed. Haha. Mira's eyes twitched and she was suddenly speechless. Of course Dexter knew the families had been scammed. According to the contract, the 3 families were promised marriage to the firstborn of Ashford family, but ended up getting scammed as the bastard son is the firstborn. The 3 families thought it would be easy to form ties with the Ashford family, not knowing it was a trap all along. Suddenly, a sharp gasp sounded out. Dexter turned around. Celine was trembling violently on the sofa. The temperature in the room started dropping fast as frost spread across the floorboards, climbing the walls, creeping across the coffee table. I read in the file that she's chronically ill. I didn't expect it to be this bad. Fuck. Where did I place the medicine her family dropped? He panicked and he ran to the hallway where they'd stacked the medical supplies. Quickly unlocked a box with 2 syringes in it. He took one. The air around Celine was so cold his fingers went numb the moment he crossed into the frost radius. Ice crystals formed on his eyelashes, but he pushed through it, bent down and quickly stabbed the syringe into her. Nothing happened at first. Then the frost stopped spreading as the ice finally cooled. Dexter grabbed every blanket he could find and wrapped them around her as the tremor slowly faded. From the doorway he saw Mira and Lyra. However, neither of them spoke. Celine drifted into an exhausted sleep. Her face was ghost pale, her lips still faintly blue. A few hours after the morning crises, Dexter was lost in thought. And went to the kitchen. The porridge was gone, the eggs were finished and the dried grains nearly gone. With Lyra's appetite, they'd burned through what little remained by dinner. He found Mira in the living room and crouched in front of her wheelchair. I need to go to the market. I'll be back within an hour. Don't open the door for anyone. Mira raised an eyebrow. Yes, master. Shall I have dinner ready when you return, master? Very funny. Don't open the door. He told Lyra the same thing via text, made sure Celine was still sleeping comfortably, and left. The corner store was 3 blocks away. Dexter kept his head down as he moved. He needed rice, vegetables, cooking oil, salt, maybe some meat if it was available. The shopkeeper stared at him for a while. You're quite popular, but I can't seem to remember where I know you from. The man's eyes lit up. Yeah, from the news. They mention you as the hidden son of the Ashford family. Then the old man frowned and glanced at Dexter. Come to think of it, it wasn't hidden son, it was bastard son. You're the one that scammed 3 girls to get married to you. The shopkeeper sneered in disgust. How did the news get out so fast? Dexter frowned and simply greeted the shopkeeper. Morning, Dexter said. He started gathering items. Rice, 2 kilos, cabbage, carrots, cooking oil, salt, and whatever pork you have that's. We're low on pork, the shopkeeper interrupted, leaning against the counter. Prices have gone up. Dexter paused, his eyes narrowed at the shopkeeper. How much? $10 per pound. Dexter's face turned black. That's twice the market price. Inflation. The shopkeeper shrugged. Take it or leave it. Dexter stared at him for a long moment. The man didn't blink. He knew he had Dexter cornered. Everyone in this neighborhood probably knew by now and might even be worse. Dexter paid. He counted out the bills, placed them on the counter, and left immediately with his things. On his way back, he saw a medicine store. Dexter hesitated but eventually entered the store. He purchased Celine's suppression medicine, which cost $500 per syringe. He bought a week's worth. The afterglow of a battle is always sweeter than the victory itself. Oscar Wilde. Dexter got home within the hour. When he opened the door, he saw his wives in the living room. Lyra and Mira were staring into space as usual, and Celine was still asleep on the old couch. Their eyes didn't even move to him when he entered, as they remained in their own world. Can't imagine what they must be feeling. After all, they were previously at the peak of their lives, but now, they had all been tossed to a useless person. Dexter shook his head and calculated how much he had left, and it was about $5,000. At this rate, they'd be broke in 2 weeks. Maybe less. He dropped the pen and rubbed his face. That evening, Dexter sat alone in the small backyard. The sky was dark and the neighborhood hummed with distant sounds of televisions, arguments, a baby crying. He crossed his legs, closed his eyes, and cultivated. The meditation technique drew ambient mana into his body, but he couldn't absorb it, like a bucket fetching water from a well. His thought began to wander and landed on money. He needed money if he wanted to make it through this month. He needed a job. But with F-rank ability, no formal combat training, and the stink of the Ashford disgrace, no legitimate guild or company would touch him. The only work available was low-level dungeon porters and scouts. Even that required a basic hero license. And a hero license required clearing at least one dungeon. Dexter opened his eyes and stared at the sky. A single star poked through the haze. Tomorrow, he thought. I'll figure it out tomorrow. The next morning, Dexter prepared a simple breakfast, rice porridge again with pickled vegetables and tea. He was setting the table when 3 heavy knocks rattled the front gate. Are the neighbors finally getting friendly? Dexter set down the teapot. He looked at his 3 wives and spoke. Stay here. He walked out the door and opened the gate. The moment he opened the door, a huge man burst through the door and entered the gate. The one in front was a tall dude built like a door with a white beard. He wore a leather jacket. Seeing him, Dexter felt his mana wave. Awakened Hero Level 3. The others were Level 2 and 1. Behind him, 3 smaller men fanned out, hands in pockets, trying to look casual. Morning, the big man said. His grin widened, revealing his gold tooth. Well, the bastard prince of the Ashfords. Look at this, boys. This is the closest you can ever get to royalty. He shoved past Dexter without waiting for an invitation and directly entered the house. The 3 thugs followed, their boots tracking mud across the living room floor. My name's Craig, the big man said, scanning the living room like a generational thief. This territory belongs to us, the Red Fawn crew. Since you're new here, I'll explain how things work. You pay us protection fee, monthly, and we will protect you from monsters' invasions. Dexter's expression didn't change. He's at the awakened hero rank level 3 stage. There's no way I can be his match. Surrender is not a sign of defeat. He inhaled and asked, how much is the protection fee? Craig smiled. I like smart people a lot. Then he came before Dexter, a head taller than him, as he looked down at Dexter as he grinned. How about $5,000 for starters? Dexter's face changed slightly. That's impossible. I don't have $5,000 to give. Craig laughed out loud, his voice booming through the walls. Oh, I think you do. He stopped in the middle of the living room. His eyes moved slowly around the room and then landed on the 3 women. Mira sat in her wheelchair near the sofa. She met Craig's gaze with indifference, as though he were a stain on the wall she couldn't be bothered to clean. Lyra sat beside Celine, the same indifference, while Celine simply stared elsewhere. Word is, Craig said, stepping closer to Dexter. The Ashfords gave you a nice little parting gift. 10 grand, right? Cash. He cracked his knuckles. Protection fee is 5,000 for the first month. After that, we negotiate. Dexter's fists clenched hard. What to do? That cash is all we have. If I give them, we won't survive for long, but if I don't, these men might do something worse. Take the money and leave. Dexter said, pulling the remaining cash envelope from his pocket. It's all I have. At that moment, Craig's men started drifting, moving towards the women. One of them licked their lips. Boss, these girls are high quality. Look at them. We could use them for a while, then sell them to some wealthy clients. Nobles pay top credit for. Ha ha ha. You're right. Even if they're broken, we could get a massive price for them from some of the underground collectors. One of the thugs grabbed Lyra by the jaw, examining her face like checking a dog. Craig's eyes flashed with a sudden, ugly greed as he looked at the three women. They would fetch a pretty penny, Craig murmured, ignoring Dexter. A surge of white-hot anger hit Dexter. Usually, he was thoughtful and calculating, but right now, his sanity vanished. Before Craig could finish his sentence, Dexter moved. He punched the first thug square in the jaw, turned, kicked the second in the balls, and tackled the third one directly to the ground, punching his face in. He had no formal combat training, but he caught them completely off guard. But the physical disparity was too wide. Dexter was only a level 1 bronze warrior. The lowest level here is level 2. Before Dexter could land the third punch, the men recovered faster than he had thought. Two of them grabbed him from behind, wrenching his arms behind his back. The third one stood up and immediately punched him in the ribs. Ugh! Craig stepped forward. His gold tooth gleamed. That was stupid, he said, and hit Dexter across the face. The blow sent blood spilling in the air, staining the floor. Craig leaned in. What did you think would happen? Dexter looked up at him. Blood trickled from his split lip down his chin. Take the money and get out. Craig sneered and ignored him as he turned toward the women again. Why would I leave when there are precious cargo to be secured? Dexter chuckled. Do you really think our families will let common thugs touch their daughters without consequences? Craig's grin faltered, but he recovered it quickly. You've all been abandoned. They don't care about you. They don't care about us. Dexter nodded in agreement. You're right. They don't care about us. However, they care about their reputation. If word gets out that some low-life street thugs laid hands on the daughters of the Frost, Vance, and Calloway families, what do you think would happen? The only way they could save face would be to make an example. Just wiping your entire crew completely won't be enough to pacify them. Your families won't be spared either. Even the bastards. Craig's face immediately went pale. He was just a regular thug, nowhere near enough to compete with those massive families. Suddenly, Craig drove a fist directly into Dexter's stomach. Dexter doubled over as he coughed up blood. His knees buckled. The men holding him let go, and he dropped to the floor. Craig snatched the envelope from Dexter's pocket. Even if I can't do anything to the girls, I can still do so many things to you. Craig muttered and patted Dexter's face. We'll be back next month. You better have more money by then. He glanced at the women one more time. Or we'll find other ways to collect. Let's go. The thugs laughed and mocked him as they left the house. Dexter lay on the floor for a long moment. Stars speckled his vision and his ribs ached as he breathed. The girls stared at him with strange expressions on their faces. But Dexter ignored it as he heard a sound. Ding! Dexter flinched. He looked around, but nothing nearby made that sound. Suddenly, golden text materialized in the air before his eyes. Could it be? Requirements have been met. Conditions. Minimum affection of 0.1, 4/3. Initializing system integration. Progress, 0%, 25%, 50%. Progress, 75%, 90%, 100%. Integration complete. Welcome, host, to the 10,000-fold investment multiplier system. Dexter couldn't believe it. Ever since the incident when he was 9, the system had been a part of his life. However, the requirement for activating the system was gaining a minuscule 0.1 affection of at least 3 people. For 10 years, he only managed to gain the affection of a single person. Now that he's 19, he had completely given up and had completely forgotten about the system. But now, the requirement was reached. How? 10,000x investment multiplier system. Investment targets: Mira Calloway, wife. Lyra Vance, wife. Celine Frost, wife. Jasmine Constance, ex-girlfriend. Name: Dexter Ashford. Race: human. Talent: not awakened. Mana affinity: F rank, low grade. Rank: awakened hero/meta hero. Level 1. Attributes: strength 25. Basic human stat is 10. Agility 25. Basic human stat is 10. Physique 25. Basic human stat is 10. Mana 20. Basic human stat is 10. Meditation technique: Starlight meditation technique. Mortal grade: increases mana absorption, improves mana recovery, accelerates cultivation speed. System notice: System note: invest in your wives, protect them, provide for them. Every act of investment, financial, emotional, physical, strategic, will yield returns multiplied by your current tier. Higher investment significance yields greater rewards. Requirement to upgrade to 100x multiplier: kill 10 beings. System note: rewards given directly by the system cannot be reused to trigger a direct investment return. For example, using the 50,000 credits to directly hand over as cash will not trigger a return. However, if you use those credits to purchase items, food, medicine, or assets for your wives, the investment return will trigger. Scanning investment. Investment detected: subject sacrificed 100% of liquid assets, $5,000, to neutralize an immediate physical threat to all 3 investment targets. Accepted physical violence to create a protective barrier. Prioritized target safety over personal welfare. Dexter was still stunned when another set of notifications came in. Analyzing target responses. Mira Calloway, emotional disturbance detected, dormant emotional seed planted. Lyra Vance, physiological response detected, cortisol decrease of 12%. A minuscule sense of madness restored for the first time in 6 months. Celine Frost, core temperature elevation of 0.3 degrees Celsius during protective action. Frost generation suppressed voluntarily for 3.2 seconds. Longest conscious suppression on record. Current multiplier: 10x. Base tier. Calculating returns. Calculation complete. Returns granted: 1. $50,000. Direct financial return: 10x original investment of $5,000. 2. Mana affinity upgrade: F rank, E rank. 3. Talent awakening: enhanced hearing, E rank, 200-meter radius plus sound differentiation. 4. Cultivation boost: 10 months of compressed mana refinement applied. 5. Flame Demon Bloodline Royal Grade. Do you wish to accept rewards? Y/N. You gave them everything? Myra's flat voice snapped Dexter out of his shock. He managed to steady himself, leaning his shoulder against the peeling wallpaper of the entryway. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, leaving a dark red smear across his face as he chuckled bitterly. I had no other choice. Myra's lips curled into a sharp sneer. You're too weak. Dexter's eyes flashed with irritation and he retorted. Pot calling the kettle black. As though she hadn't heard him, Mira closed her eyes and sunk into her own world. As for Lyra, she stared at him for a brief moment as though trying to figure something out, but then she eventually gave up, turned to stare at the window. On the other side of the sofa, Celine hadn't moved a single bit even when the thugs came. It was as though she hadn't heard anything and remained closed off in her world. Dexter sighed but didn't say anything else. While he felt they were disappointed in him, his system told him something else. Dragging his feet, Dexter made it to his small bedroom and sat cross-legged on his airbed. He closed his eyes and breathed out. The glowing golden text of the system still hovered in his vision, bright and steady in the darkness of his closed eyelids. Returns granted. 1. 50,000 credits, direct financial return, 10x original investment of 5,000 credits. 2. Mana affinity upgrade F rank, E rank. 3. Talent Awakening. Enhanced Hearing Ear Rank, 200-meter radius plus sound differentiation. 4. Cultivation Boost, 10 months of compressed mana refinement applied. 5. Flame Demon Bloodline, Royal Grade. Do you wish to accept rewards? Y/N. Dexter stared at the prompt with shivering hands. He had spent his entire life believing he would always be a useless, unawakened nobody. But these girls he thought were burdens turned out to be the ones to unlock his system. Accept. In that instant, a notification rang out on his phone. Dexter took out his Samsung Galaxy 9 out and saw $50,000 had been deposited into his bank account. It's actually real? Just as this shock rippled through his mind, an invisible shockwave exploded outward from his chest. Boom! A violent shockwaves exploded from his body as something within him snapped like massive chains clacking and unlocking all at once. Dexter's eyes flew wide open as his body trembled uncontrollably as his heart began to beat with the force of a piston in an engine. Thump! 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 The force of the heartbeat was so strong that it sent vibrations down the bed and to the ground. Every single pore on his skin suddenly opened wide and in that instant, started to suck in the mana in the surroundings like a vacuum. Gradually, an invisible vortex of mana formed around him as his body rapidly absorbed it like sponge. The raw energy rushed toward him like a vacuum as mana forced its way into his skin, filling his empty, dry meridians with mana, just like a dress well finally producing water. Kra-ka-ka. His bones popped, from his toes to his skull. It sounded like a string of firecrackers going off inside his skeleton. Dexter gasped as his muscles began to tighten, and hardening under the sudden influx of raw power. He felt so light and incredible free. All his life he hadn't noticed just how sluggish and heavy he was. System notification. Cultivation boost applied. 10 months of compressed mana refinement integrated. Host has leveled up. Awakened hero level 1 level 2. The pain in his ribs began to fade, replaced by a warm, solid pressure. But before the happiness could fully settle, a sudden, terrifying heat erupted from within him. The heat grew rapidly and it felt like someone had poured liquid fire directly down his throat. His eyes widened as steam began to rise from his skin. The blood inside his veins felt as though it had turned into molten lava, bubbling and boiling as it rushed through his newly widened pathways. Damn it! What is this? Dexter thought, his teeth slamming shut. He bit his tongue hard, as he fought not to scream in pain. Sweat poured from his forehead, sizzling as it dripped onto the dusty wood. The pain was intense, consuming every single nerve ending in his body. It felt as though his very cells were being torn apart and rebuilt. Deep within his chest, his cellular structure was changing. A dark, powerful demonic essence was weaved itself into his human DNA, fusing with his flesh and bone. Then, just as the heat came, it vanished back and faded into nothing. A soft wave of hot air burst outward from his body, carrying a faint scent of sulfur and ash, before dissipating into the corners of the room. Huff! 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 Dexter slumped on his bed and panted heavily, but his eyes shined brilliantly. System notification. Flame Demon Bloodline, Royal Grade, successfully integrated. All basic attributes have received a permanent +2 bonus. Bloodline profile. Flame Demon Bloodline, Grade Royal. Passive skills. 1. Fire resistance. 20% host can resist 20% of all damage caused by fire-based attacks. 2. Flame Will. Host can conjure and control basic flames using personal mana. Active skills. 1. Scorching Fury. Increase overall physical strength by 50% for 3 minutes. Cost. 20 mana per minute. Cooldown. 24 hours. 2. Flame Demon Transformation. Awaken the innate bloodline to temporarily gain 1% of a true flame demon's power. Locked. Requires higher cultivation level. 3. Flame Slash. Release a destructive blade strike composed of concentrated fire. 200% attack power and speed. Cost. 20 mana per strike. Cooldown. 24 hours. 4. Flame burst step. Gain a sudden burst of speed, increasing movement velocity by 300% for 1 second. Cost: 30 mana per burst. Cooldown: 10 seconds. Dexter slowly raised his hands, staring at them in the dim light of the bedroom. They still looked the same, but he felt raw power coursing through his muscles. He hadn't expected the bloodline to be so powerful. With his current strength and skills, he felt like he could handle the 3 thugs and even Craig easily now. He was currently a Tier 2 awakened hero, and while it wasn't impressive, to a man who had spent his life at the bottom, this was like learning to breathe after years of drowning. The moment his mana affinity shifted from F rank to E rank, he felt his meridians changing, slowly widening by a few millimeters at most. At this rate, mana easily flowed through his system with less resistance. Talent: Enhanced Hearing. Type: Auxiliary. Rank: E. Ability: Hear sounds within a 200-meter radius under normal conditions, and up to 1 kilometer in a straight line when focusing. Permits sound differentiation and heart rate tracking. Nor just increasing his affinity, gaining bloodline and strength, he also awakened talent too. Dexter closed his eyes, focusing his mind on his ears. Instantly, the world exploded with sound. He could hear the slow, rhythmic dripping of the leaky faucet in the kitchen 3 walls away. He could hear the rustle of dry leaves scraping against the backyard fence. More than that, he could hear the distinct, separate heartbeats of the 3 women in the living room. Myra's heartbeat was slow, steady, and heavy, carrying a deep, sluggish rhythm. Lyra's heart beat with a rapid, light pattern, like a bird trapped in a cage. And Celine's heart was weak and erratic. Satisfied, Dexter stood up. The movement was incredibly smooth, his joints no longer making sounds. He walked to the bathroom, stripped off his sweat-soaked clothes, and stepped into the shower. As the hot water washed over him, he looked at his reflection in the small, fogged-up mirror. The purple bruise on his jaw was gone. The sharp, deep pain in his ribs had completely vanished, leaving only a faint red scratch on his side. His body looked more fit, the muscles more defined and tight. He dried himself off, dressed in a clean black t-shirt and gray joggers, and walked out into the hallway. Dexter decided to check on the girls if they needed anything. The moment he entered, Mira, Lyra, and Celine all turned their heads toward the hallway at the exact same instant. Their eyes locked onto him, their expressions filled with a strange, sudden intensity. Dexter paused, feeling a bit self-conscious under their combined stare. "Why are they looking at me like they've seen a ghost?" he thought, blinking. Lyra's dark eyes narrowed slightly, her gaze moving from his face down to his shoulders, then to his hands. Even though she could not hear, she was still connected to mana and could feel the sudden, dramatic shift in his presence. Celine's head remained tilted toward him, her sightless eyes wide. The 2 of them stared for only 2 seconds before turning their heads away, returning to their quiet states. But Mira continued to look at him with her crimson eyes. "Is something wrong?" Dexter frowned as he asked, clearing his throat. "You've awakened," Mira said. Her voice was quiet, but there was an unusual weight behind it. As a former superhero, even with her meridians blocked, she could still perceive mana due to her high affinity. Dexter hesitated for a moment, then gave a slow, honest nod. "Something happened while I was resting. After the fight with Craig's men, it felt like a barrier inside me broke." Mira gazed at him for half a second and gave a simply quiet hum, then closed her eyes and returned to darkness. Dexter was about to leave, but he suddenly thought of something. He expanded his system interface, then focused on Myra's name under the investment targets, and the screen expanded into a detailed panel of golden text. Name: Mira Calloway. Age: 22. Relationship: wife. Cultivation: former rank: A rank hero. Former level: Ultra rank hero, peak. Current level: Awakened, 4th tier. Current mana: 12%. Sealed. Body condition: Meridian damage: 89%. Neck down paralysis: Paralysis from the neck down. Chronic nerve pain. A muscle atrophy. Core instability. Mental state: depressed, suicidal, angry, hateful, in pain, slightly amused. Dexter felt a sudden, deep ache in his chest as he read the description. A level 6 out of 10 chronic nerve pain, constantly firing through her body while she sat there, unable to move a single finger to soothe it. No wonder her voice was always so bitter and cold. "I can feel your eyes on me," Mira said suddenly. "See something you like, husband?" Before Dexter could find a response, a sharp, choked gasp shattered the silence. Name: Mira Calloway. Age: 22. Relationship: wife. Cultivation: former rank: A rank hero. Former level: ultra rank hero, peak tier. Current level: awakened, 4th tier. Current mana: 12%. Sealed. Body condition: meridian damage, 89%. Neck down paralysis. Paralysis from the neck down. Chronic nerve pain. A muscle atrophy. Core instability. Mental state: depressed, suicidal, angry, hateful, in pain, slightly amused. Dexter felt a sudden, deep ache in his chest as he read the description. A level 6 out of 10 chronic nerve pain, constantly firing through her body while she sat there, unable to move a single finger to soothe it. No wonder her voice was always so bitter and cold. "I can feel your eyes on me," Mira said suddenly. "See something you like, husband?" Before Dexter could find a response, a sharp, choked gasp shattered the silence. Celine Frost, who had been sitting quietly on the far edge of the old sofa, suddenly stiffened. Her breath hitched in her throat, a soft, wheezing sound escaping her lips. Dexter's head snapped toward her. He recognized the signs instantly. Another icy seizure was beginning. "Celine," he called out. The temperature in the small living room plummeted instantly. The air grew so cold that Dexter's breath turned into thick, white plumes. Frost began to bloom rapidly across Celine's pale skin, turning the ends of her dark hair a stark, icy white. Thin, delicate sheets of ice began to crawl across the fabric of the sofa, spreading down the wooden legs and onto the floorboards. She was sitting right at the very edge of the cushions. As her body began to convulse, her balance wavered. She began to tilt forward, her sightless eyes wide with silent panic. If she fell, her head would slam directly into the sharp edge of the low wooden coffee table. With her frail, weakened body, such an impact could easily result in a fatal head injury or a fractured skull. Dexter did not hesitate. Flame burst step. His body moved before his mind could even register the command. 5 points of mana vanished from his core, and a soft, low thud of heat exploded beneath his feet. In an instant, his speed tripled. He blurred across the short distance, his hand reaching out to catch her just as her shoulders cleared the edge of the seat. He wrapped his arms around her shivering frame, pulling her back against his chest. The moment his skin made contact with her shoulders, a biting, intense cold surged through his arms. The frost on her cardigan transferred to his sleeves, turning the fabric stiff and white. It felt as though 100 tiny needles of ice were driving deep into his flesh, trying to freeze the blood in his hands. But Dexter held on. He gritted his teeth and immediately activated Flame Will. A burst of heat surged from his hands as he tried to contain the frost, but it was like a candle in a hurricane. With his right hand, he reached into his pocket and pulled out one of the emergency syringes he had purchased from the pharmacy earlier. He removed the cap with his teeth, lined up the needle against her shoulder, and pressed the plunger, injecting the warm, thick serum directly into her system. The seizure lasted for 30 seconds. To Dexter, it felt like hours. Gradually, the violent tremors in her limbs began to slow, and the rapid spread of frost on the floorboards halted, the thin layers of ice slowly melting into small pools of water. When the episode finally passed, Celine slumped forward against his shoulder, completely unconscious. Her skin was still damp and pale, but her breathing had returned to a slow, even rhythm. Throughout the entire ordeal, neither Lyra nor Mira glanced at their direction. They seemed to have gotten used to Celine's condition. Dexter's gently lifted her, carrying her small, fragile body into the bedroom, and laid her down on the large, combined mattress. He pulled 3 thick blankets over her, tucking her in tightly to ensure she would stay warm, then turned on the radiator. The sickness seemed to be acting up faster than usual. Dexter wiped the remaining frost from his hands, thinking about the time intervals when a clear, familiar sound echoed in his mind. Ding! System notification. Investment detected. Physical protection and medical intervention during an episode. 10x multiplier activated. Target: Celine Frost, wife. Calculating returns. Calculation complete. Returns granted. 1. Frost resistance. Minor host can now tolerate low temperatures and ice-based energy attacks 15% more effectively. 2. Frost sense. Host's body is now sensitive to the unique mana fluctuations of frost. You can now sense and predict Celine's seizures 10 to 15 seconds before they physically begin. Dexter was pleasantly surprised. With this system, maybe he would eventually find a cure for her. He closed his eyes and accepted the rewards. The sun slowly came as night fell over the quiet neighborhood. Inside, the atmosphere was completely different from the cold despair of the previous day. For the first time in years, Dexter felt a deep, genuine happiness. He hummed a soft tune as he moved around the kitchen. Earlier, he had searched the internet on his phone, looking for healthy, nourishing recipes that could help restore physical strength and gently soothe damaged meridians. He had settled on a recipe for a slow-simmered chicken and wild herb broth. He carefully chopped fresh ginger, dry ginseng roots he had found in the family gift boxes, and fresh green onions. He washed a cup of pearl rice he bought earlier, letting it boil slowly in a clay pot until the grains softened and broke down. Releasing a thick, comforting aroma, then he added sliced mushrooms and soft, shredded meat. It was a simple meal, but to a body that had been starved of nourishment, it was medicine. I wonder what rewards I will get this time, Dexter thought happily as he set 4 bowls and spoons on the wooden dining table. He walked to the living room, where the 3 girls sat in their usual silence. Dinner's ready, he called out. No one moved. Right? I keep forgetting. He pulled out his phone and typed, "Food is ready. Come to the kitchen." He held the screen in front of Lyra, who read it, nodded. She stood up. Her movements were graceful despite her thin frame, as she walked to Celine's side and touched her elbow. Celine tilted her head, recognizing the touch, and allowed Lyra guide her toward the kitchen. They'd only been here 2 days, but they were already learning each other's rhythms. Dexter then turned to Mira. She still had her eyes closed. The evening light caught her red hair and made it glow like embers. He walked behind her wheelchair and gripped the handles. "I'm taking you to the kitchen." Mira didn't respond, nor did she open her eyes. Dexter didn't mind. He wasn't looking for a response the first place. He unlocked the wheelchair and pushed her through the doorway and into the kitchen. The 4 sat together in the small kitchen. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the clinking of spoons could be heard. Lyra guided Celine's hand to her spoon, helping her find the bowl, and she began to eat on her own. Dexter sat beside Mira. He picked up her spoon, scooped a small portion of the warm food and blew on it, then held the spoon to her lips. Mira stared at him, her crimson eyes flickering with a mixture of annoyance and reluctance. But the rich, savory smell of the food was too enticing to ignore, making her stomach let out a quiet, embarrassing growl. She opened her mouth, letting him feed her. The moment the warm porridge touched her tongue, her crimson eyes widened slightly. The savory flavor of the chicken broth, balanced by the earthy sweetness of the ginseng and ginger, seemed to burst across her taste buds. Moreover, she felt a faint warmth ease the sharp, persistent nerve pain in her neck and shoulders slightly. Even Lyra and Celine paused when they tasted the food. Mira swallowed and looked at Dexter. "Did you actually cook this?" "I did," Dexter said, smiling as he gathered another spoonful. "Is it to your liking?" "It is acceptable," she replied indifferently, though she quickly opened her mouth for the next bite. Dexter smiled at her reaction and fed her until her bowl was completely empty. He then finished his own portion and was satisfied as the other 2 finished their meal. After dinner, Dexter cleaned the dishes while the women sat in their various spot. Lyra by the window, Celine by the couch, and Mira anywhere Levi placed her. He was drying the last bowl when the notification appeared. Ding! Investment detected. Subject prepared and provided meal with beneficial mana properties to all 3 investment targets. Physical nourishment provided. Emotional labor performed. Feeding assistance. Current multiplier. 10x. Base tier. Calculating returns. Calculation complete. Returns granted. 1.5 body nourishing meals recipe. Complete set. Grade 2. A collection of 5 recipes specifically designed for heroes with damaged meridians. Each meal targets different aspects of physical and energetic recovery. 2. Cultivation boost. 2 days of compressed mana refinement applied. 3. Peak novice foodsmith. Do you wish to accept rewards? Y/N. Dexter was stunned by the rewards. Just cooking for them casually gave this much rewards. What if he unlocked the 10,000 multiplier system? Wouldn't he become godlike? I actually got a graded technique? And it's actually a cooking type technique. Whoa! It actually also made me a foodsmith. In this world, there are geneticists who concoct serums that provide special attributes like increasing strength, speed, and even advancing cultivation levels. And also, there are those who apply the same techniques to food. These people are called foodsmiths. They use special techniques to nourish their food, making it have effects that is beneficial to the body. And now, he was at the peak of novice rank without having a single knowledge about being a foodsmith. He accepted immediately. In that moment, mana rushed into his body in a ways and his bones cracked and popped as his strength increased by a bit. At the same time, memories flooded his brain rapidly. Various cooking techniques flooded his mind in a flash, and just like that he was a peak novice foodsmith. That's not all. The information about the recipe and also various ingredients needed flooded into his mind like they had been part of his memories. 5 Nourishment Meal. Meal 1. Meridian Soothing Broth. A golden liquid made with various ingredients but 2 main ingredients with 2 main ingredients: sunmoon fruit, juniper root, sunmoon fruit, and juniper bark root. Soothes inflamed meridians and promotes gradual repair of minor damage. Meal 2. Marrow Fortifying Stew. Thick, hearty stew containing ground dragon bone and blood rice. Strengthens the skeletal structure and improves mana circulation through the bones. Meal 3. Nerve Calming Kanji. A rice porridge infused with serenity willow bark and moonlight dew. Reduces chronic nerve pain and calms the nervous system. Meal 4. Chi Replenishing Soup. A clear soup made with starlight mushroom and essence spring water. Directly replenishes depleted mana reserves and accelerates natural mana regeneration. Meal 5. Body Harmonizing Rice Bowl. A balanced meal combining elements of the previous 4 recipes with additional herbs. Brings the body's systems into alignment and promotes overall healing. Dexter's hands were trembling slightly as he finished drying the bowl. Half of the ingredients listed in his memories, he hadn't seen them. And half he recognized, but they were too expensive. He pulled out his phone and began searching for the price of the ingredients. It took Dexter half an hour to find what he needed. There was a commercial district nearby called the Merchant Quarter. Most of the shops there are equipment stores, potion suppliers, and other stuffs. Tucked between a weaponsmith and a potion brewery was a small shop called Heaven's Taste. Cultivation Cuisine Supplies. Dexter scanned their online catalog and found everything he needed. Spirit Ginseng, 400 credits per root. Phoenix Feather Root, 300 credits per bundle. Ground Dragon Bone, 500 credits per packet. Serenity Willow Bark, 200 credits per portion. Starlight Mushroom, 350 credits per batch. Moonlight Dew, 250 credits per vial. Essence Spring Water, 150 credits per bottle. Blood Rice, 100 credits per bag. For Meal 1, the Meridian Soothing Broth, the daily cost was approximately 1,100 credits for 3 servings. For all 5 meals rotated throughout the week, the daily cost averaged around 2,000 credits. It was astonishingly expensive. A regular family could eat for a month on what Dexter would spend in a day. Dexter's eyes flickered and he wondered if it was going to be worth it spending so much money on food. But he quickly shook the thought of. With the system, he didn't need to be worried. Dexter did the math in his head. If he spent 2,000 credits per day on ingredients, that was 14,000 credits per week. Over a month, that was roughly 56,000 credits. If he maximized the significance of each investment, the returns could far outweigh the costs. The next morning, Dexter woke up early, showered and dressed in a simple black hoodie and sweatpants, pulling the hood low over his face. The walk to the merchant quarter took 40 minutes. He reached the merchant quarter and it was quite less crowded as people were still preparing for work. Delivery trucks were unloading crates and the shop owners were setting up displays. Heaven's Taste was a narrow storefront with a green awning and a hand-painted sign. The windows displayed jars of dried herbs, bundles of roots, and packets of powder. Dexter pushed open the door. "Morning," Dexter spoke softly. "I need a week's supply of specialized ingredients. Sunmoon fruit, juniper bark root, dry dragon leaf, and premium spiritual pearl rice." An elderly man with thick glasses was behind the counter. The man gave a warm smile and replied, "How much quantity do you want to purchase?" Dexter calculated for a bit and replied. The merchant nodded his head. $2,000 for a single day's supply of genuine sunmoon fruit and juniper bark root. For a week, that will be $14,000. Dexter did not hesitate. He tapped his phone against the payment terminal, confirming the transfer. "I'll take them. Please pack them securely." The old man's smile widened. What a nice customer. He didn't even haggle. Then he replied, "Please wait while I prepare them, do you?" He then left the counter and headed deeper into the shop. After the transaction was done, Dexter bought more things, 2 large bags of premium organic rice, fresh vegetables, lean chicken breast, and high-quality beef from the organic section, spending another $500. While walking on the street, he used his phone to browse a reputable local security agency online. The bungalow's wooden doors and thin window frames were far too easy to breach, as Craig had proven. He selected a high-grade home defense package that included reinforced steel deadbolts, heavy iron security bars for all ground-floor windows, and a basic motion sensor alarm system. He paid $5,000 upfront for an express, same-day installation, and so the agency promised to send a team of technicians that same morning. While walking through the district, he stopped in front of an relic shop. Relic are tools with special effects to increase one's damage power, speed, and even mana. The higher the type of the relic, the stronger they are. The relic shop was called Essence Emporium. The interior was larger than Heaven's Taste, with glass display cases arranged in a grid pattern. Each case held jewelry, weapons, accessories, and all of them faintly glowing with stored mana. Type 1 relics were the lowest tier of enchanted items, but even they were expensive. A young man in a neat uniform stood behind the counter. "Welcome to Essence Emporium. How can I help you today? I need equipments with pain reduction and calming effects. Do you have anything like that?" The clerk's expression became professionally interested. "We have several options. For pain reduction, I'd recommend the Serenity Bangle." The youth to a display case of silver bracelets. Type 1, reduces pain signals by up to 10% and takes the edge off chronic conditions. "How much?" 8,000 credits. Dexter's eyes twitched. That was more than he'd expected. He sighed and replied, "I'll take one." The clerk retrieved the bracelet and placed it on the counter. It was plain thin silver band with a small blue gem set in the center. But there was actual beauty in its simplicity. For calming effects, the clerk continued, "We have the Tranquility Band. Type 1, reduces anxiety and stabilizes emotional fluctuations. It's often prescribed for heroes with PTSD or anxiety disorders. Does it help with seizures?" The clerk hesitated. "It's not designed for that specifically, but if the seizures are triggered by emotional instability or stress, it might reduce their frequency. I can't make any guarantees." Dexter thought of Celine and replied, "I'll take 2, he said. 2 tranquility bands? Yes. That's 5,000 each, so 10,000 total." Dexter's remaining balance was shrinking rapidly. But the system would reward him. He had to trust that. He paid and took the 3 bracelets, 1 serenity bangle for Mira, 2 tranquility bands for Celine and Lyra. After confirming the payment, Dexter took the 3 small jade boxes and slipped them into his backpack. His also stopped at a licensed medical supply pharmacy. He purchased a few bandages, painkillers, and other things. While standing at the counter, he hesitated, his face turning slightly red as his eyes fell on the hygiene section. He realized that 3 young women living in an old house would eventually need basic personal supplies. Embarrassed but resolute, he grabbed several packs of premium pads and personal hygiene wipes, placing them on the counter. "Is that everything, sir?" the pharmacist asked, hiding a small smile. "Yes," Dexter said, clearing his throat. "That's everything." On his way back to the bungalow, as he passed a high-tech electronics store, a display in the window caught his eye. It was a pair of sleek AI smart glasses. The advertisement claimed the glasses could translate spoken words into real-time text projected onto the lenses, or translate it to other languages so one can speak across several languages. Dexter paused as an idea formulated in his mind. He entered the store and purchased 2 pairs of the smart glasses for $20,000. By the time he finished his shopping spree, his bank account had been reduced from 50,000 credits to exactly 6,000. He had spent $44,000 in a single morning, but he did not feel a single shred of regret. Dexter arrived back at the bungalow at 8:30. At exactly 9 o'clock, a white van pulled up outside the gate. 3 professional security technicians stepped out, carrying heavy toolboxes and metal bars. Dexter greeted them quietly, guiding them through the house. For the next 2 hours, the sound of drilling and metal clanging echoed through the bungalow. By 10 o'clock, the work was finished. Every window on the ground floor was now reinforced with thick, black iron security bars, and the front and back doors had been fitted with heavy, Grade 1 steel deadbolts and a digital keypad lock. A small, subtle alarm panel was installed beside the entrance. It wasn't enough, but at least it could inform the police if there was another break-in attempt. With the house secure, Dexter walked into the ladies' room. Mira was already awake, strangely sitting in her wheelchair. Dexter guessed Lyra might have helped her there, while Lyra sat quietly on the sofa and Celine laying in the bed with her eyes opened. Dexter reached into his backpack and pulled out the first pair of AI smart glasses. He walked over to Lyra, crouching down so he was at eye level with her. As he reached out, Lyra flinched slightly, her shoulders tensing as she pulled back. Dexter stopped his movement, keeping his hands open and visible. He pulled out his notepad and wrote in large, clear letters, "These are smart glasses. They will translate my voice into text on the screen so you can see what I am saying. Please try them." He held the note in front of her. Lyra read the words, her dark eyes moving from the paper to the sleek, white glasses in his hand. But her expression didn't change in the slightest. He held them out to her. Lyra didn't reach for them. Dexter waited. Then he typed another message. "Please try them. I think they'll help." She stared at the text for a long moment. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and took the glasses. Her fingers were cold. She turned the glasses over in her hands, examining them. Then she put them on. The lenses flickered as the AI activated. The clerk had already calibrated it in advance, so he didn't need to touch anything. Dexter nervously cleared his throat and spoke. "Can you see the text?" The glasses translated his voice into words that appeared on Lyra's lenses in real time. "Can you see the text?" Lyra's eyes moved slightly, reading. Then she looked at Dexter. Her expression changed. It was so subtle that anyone without enhanced perception might have missed it. But Dexter caught it. "That means it's working." Dexter grinned and spoke again. "If you want to speak back to me," Dexter said, pointing to the small button on the frame of the glasses. "You can type a message on your phone, and the glasses will read the text out loud using a text-to-speech feature. We can communicate now." Lyra remained silent, completely rooted in place, staring at him through the glasses. "Hey," Dexter said softly, leaning closer. "Are you all right?" She did not respond. She looked down at her lap, her hands clenching into tight fists. Dexter sighed quietly, thinking he might have pushed her too fast or made her uncomfortable. He stood up, turning his attention to Celine. Dexter walked over to Celine, holding the second pair of smart glasses. He carefully sat beside her, keeping his voice low so as not to startle her. "Celine, I bought something for you too. These glasses have an active AI assistant. I've installed the house schematic to the glasses. Also, it constantly scans the surroundings, and through the bone-conducting sound, it will speak to you and inform you where you want to go or how many steps to the kitchen, and where the doors are. It will help you move around the house safely." Celine did not respond. She laid there as still as a statue, her pale skin looking almost translucent in the morning light. Dexter waited for a moment, then gently set the white glasses on the sofa cushion right beside her hand. "I'll leave them here for you. You can try them whenever you feel ready." Dexter walked back into the kitchen and started making the 5 body-nourishing meals he knew by heart this time. According to the text, this broth was a rare, low-grade enchanted meal designed specifically to slowly coat damaged meridians, easing the constant nerve pain caused by severed pathways and restoring a tiny fraction of active mana circulation. Dexter carefully pulled the expensive ingredients from the insulated bags. He sliced the thick, pale root of the sun-moon fruit into thin, even discs. The root released a sharp, medicinal scent that cleared his sinuses. He then took the juniper bark root and ground it into a fine powder using a small mortar and pestle. As the hours passed, the kitchen filled with an incredible, rich aroma. The scent was entirely different from the simple porridge he had made the night before. It was sweet, heavy, and complex, smelling of fresh mountain air, wild honey, and warm herbs. By 1 o'clock, the broth had boiled down into a thick, shimmering liquid that looked like liquid gold. "Ding! You have succeeded in making a grade 1 making enchanted meal. Name: enchanted meal. Type: food. Grade 1. Effect: nourish the body, moisturize meridians, heal injuries, and calm the mind." Dexter ladled the hot, golden broth into 3 small bowls, then carried them to the dining table, where his 3 wives were already seated. Interestingly, none of them were wearing the smart glasses he had purchased. Lyra had left hers on the living room table, and Celine still sat untouched on the sofa cushion. Dexter's brow furrowed slightly in disappointment, but he did not comment. He set the bowls down in front of them. He sat beside her wheelchair with the bowl in one hand and the spoon in the other. "Open," he said. Mira turned her head to look at him. Her crimson eyes moved from his face to the bowl to the spoon. Her eyes squinted as though she recognized what it was but couldn't believe it. "What is this?" she asked. "Meridian-soothing broth," Dexter said. "First of the 5 body-nourishing meals." Myra's eyes widened slightly as she knew it was actually a grade 1 enchanted meal the moment she saw it. But if it was really a grade 1 enchanted meal and Dexter made it, that would mean that Dexter was at least a novice foodsmith. Truly full of surprises, she thought in her mind as she glanced at him. Dexter fed her and she opened her mouth slightly, letting the warm spoon enter. The moment the broth touched her throat, a soothing warmth exploded within her chest. A wave of pure, refined mana rushed along her severed meridians. The constant, burning nerve pain in her neck and shoulders suddenly dulled, dropping significantly for the first time in 3 years. She stared at Dexter and spoke. "Didn't you give all your money to the filth yesterday?" "Don't worry about the money," Dexter replied with a small, relaxed chuckle, holding up another spoonful. Mira stared at him, her eyes searching his face, but she eventually gave up and muttered, "Stubborn." As he fed her, Mira glanced at the empty space on the table beside her, then looked at Dexter. "Where is mine?" Dexter paused, his spoon hovering in the air. "Your what?" She narrowed her crimson eyes at him. "My smart glasses. Or do you think I don't need them just because I'm paralyzed?" Dexter snorted softly, a trace of amusement in his eyes. "Don't you usually like closing your eyes and ignoring me? What do you need them for?" Mira glared at him. "If I don't wear them, good luck getting those 2 to wear theirs." Dexter's face twitched. He looked from Mira to Lyra and Celine, who were sitting silently at the table. He realized Mira might be right. The other two were watching her, taking cues from her behavior. "All right," Dexter said, sighing as he smiled. "I give up. If you can get them to wear the glasses, I will buy the latest, most expensive model for you tomorrow." Mira let out a short, quiet huff of satisfaction, swallowing the last of her broth. "Did you sell your kidney?" Dexter smiled gently as he reached into his backpack, pulling out 3 small, velvet-lined jade boxes. "Would it have mattered if I did?" Mira rolled her eyes, but said, "Nothing more." "Oh, before I forget." Dexter set the 3 jade boxes on the table. He opened the first box, revealing the bronze-tinted metallic pain-reducing bracelet. He leaned closer to Mira, carefully lifting her limp right hand and sliding the band over her wrist. "It's really ugly," Mira muttered, looking at the simple bronze band. But the moment the metal made contact with her skin, a soft, high-frequency hum vibrated through her wrist. A mild, soothing electric pulse traveled up her arm, gently blocking the chronic pain signals in her spine. The constant pain in her neck and shoulders dropped by another 10%. Mira froze. Her crimson eyes widened as she felt the sudden, blessed relief wash over her body. She looked from her wrist to Dexter's face, her voice dropping to a whisper. You bought me a Type 1 artifact?" "Yes," Dexter said, nodding his head. "It's a pain reduction artifact. It should help make sitting in that chair a bit more comfortable." He stood up, picked up the other 2 jade boxes and handed them to Lyra. He pulled out his phone, typed a quick note, and showed it to her. "These are calming bracelets. They are low-grade artifacts that will help calm your mind and reduce Celine's seizure frequency. Please keep them." Lyra read the text, her dark eyes looking at the beautiful, blue jade bracelets inside the boxes. She looked up at Dexter, her expression soft and silent, and slowly nodded. She took one of the bracelets and slid it onto her own wrist, then reached out to slide the second one onto Celine's arm. Celine sat quietly, drinking her golden broth in silence. But when she finished her bowl, she slowly tilted her head toward Dexter. Her lips parted, and she spoke in a voice so soft and quiet that Dexter almost missed it. "Warm." It was the very first word she had spoken to him since they met. At that exact moment, a flood of bright, golden notifications materialized in Dexter's vision, accompanied by a rapid succession of soft tones in his mind. Ding! Investment detected. Physical, mental, emotional, security. Current multiplier, 10x. Calculating returns. Calculation complete. Returns granted. Skill upgrade. Cooking, novice. Peak. Early, rank 1 master foodsmith. Improved enchanted meal success rate. Reduced ingredient waste. Enhanced flavor extraction. Additional meal effects. Recipe acquired. Grade 2 recipe. Body accelerating healing broth. Accelerates recovery and healing. Double the effect of the 5 body nourishing meals when taken together. Cultivation reward. 2 months of compressed mana refinement. Item upgrades. Serenity Bangle X2. Type 1 relic, Type 2 relic. The pain reduction. 10%, 20%. Tranquility Band. Type 1 relic, Type 2 relic. Calms the mind. Stimulates brain activity. AI Smart Glasses. Type 1, X3. Uses body heat to charge. Doesn't need internet to translate. 100x speed in transcribing and translating. Type 2. Real-time speech translation. Multi-language translation. Detects mana signatures. Detects aura fluctuations. Medical supplies. Grade 1 painkiller. Eliminates pain for 2 hours. Security upgrade. Smart security system. Right reinforced steel deadbolts. Iron window bars. Emotion detection alarm. Mana-sensitive perimeter ward. Silent alert linked to security guild. Do you wish to accept rewards? Y/N. Dexter almost burst out in happiness right there and then. All his investments actually came back to him. Well, not the cash, but even then, These returns were terrifying. Just cooking for a few hours and he gained 2 months' worth of cultivation. If he did this every day, wouldn't he break through to superhero stage in less than a month? It was too terrifying to even think about. Dexter accepted without hesitation. The knowledge flooded into his mind, new techniques, new recipes, new understanding of how food and cultivation intersected. His hands tingled as the cooking skill upgraded, muscle memory forming for movements he'd never made. 2 more months of cultivation, added to the 10 months he'd already received. That was a full year of compressed mana refinement in less than 48 hours. He was still weak, still at the bottom of the power hierarchy, but he was climbing. Dexter's smile vanished instantly. His ear-rank enhanced hearing activated and he picked up the sound of a heavy, idling engine outside the gate. He walked cautiously to the front door, unlocked the heavy new deadbolt, and stepped onto the porch. Standing outside the gate was a massive, clean-cut bodyguard wearing a tailored black suit and dark sunglasses. He stood with his hands folded in front of him. Behind him, a long black Rolls-Royce sat parked against the curb. The rear door of the luxury car opened, and another bodyguard, holding a large black umbrella, helped a woman step out onto the cracked asphalt. The woman walked elegantly up the concrete path toward the gate. She looked to be in her late 30s, but her smooth, pale skin and flawless features made her look no older than 19. She had long, raven-black hair streaked with elegant silver at the temples, sharp, aristocratic cheekbones, and eyes the color of winter ice. She wore a dark designer dress that likely cost more than Dexter's entire house, and her every movement oozed a cold, effortless authority. "Stepmother," Dexter said, his voice going completely flat. "Valentina Ashford." She was the primary wife of Aldrich Ashford, the current leader of the family. She was the woman who had orchestrated Dexter's suffering and isolation since he was a child. Valentina had never laid a hand on him herself. She was far too intelligent for physical violence. Instead, she had simply reduced him to a life of slavery, suffering, and pain. She had spent 10 years trying to make him invisible, to erase his very existence, and even killed a few of the servants for pitying him. Those who show him affection either ends up dead or maimed. "Dexter, darling," Valentina said, her perfect smile not reaching her cold, winter blue eyes. "May I come in?" Without waiting for his invitation, the lead bodyguard opened the gate, and Valentina walked past Dexter, stepping into the small bungalow. She surveyed the small living room with barely concealed disdain, her ice blue eyes lingering on the worn sofas and old TV. "How cozy," Valentina murmured, her gaze moving slowly around the room. "I see you've made yourselves at home. What do you want, Valentina?" Dexter growled. Valentina's smile sharpened. "Can't a mother check on her dear son? My mother died when I was born." "True, a truly mysterious death." Valentina glanced at him and chuckled, then smoothly walked slowly around the room. She paused near the dining table, her cold gaze falling on the 3 women. The Crimson Valkyrie, Shadow Saintess, and the illustrious Eternal Ice Princess Tempest. She let out a soft, mocking tutang sound. Such a waste. 3 brilliant heroes reduced to this, and married to a useless bastard. She turned to Dexter, her head tilting like a curious bird. "Your father was quite generous, don't you think? He could have ignored the plea of the 3 families. Instead, he let you marry the 3 useless and famous cripple." Dexter's eyes narrowed. "I am asking again. What do you want, Valentina? Since I no longer have ties to the Ashford family, I can have you arrested for trespassing." Valentina's smile slowly vanished, and for a brief second, her mask of high-class elegance slipped, revealing a cold, ruthless expression. "Very well," she said quietly. "Your father is concerned about the safety of your 3 wives. We heard of the attack from the thugs and asked me to deliver a warning. If anything happens to these 3 girls under your roof, the Ashford family will hand you over to the Calloway, Vance, and Frost families as a sacrifice to appease their anger." Dexter let out a cold, sharp laugh. "Banish me to this rundown house and then threaten me? You've already thrown me away, Valentina. Your threats mean nothing to me. Get the fuck out of my house, and tell Aldrich I've severed ties with the family as per the contract. The safety of my wives are my concern alone. I and the Ashford family have nothing to do with each other. So leave. Valentina's expression did not change, but her gaze hardened. Brave words for a useless kid. She turned to leave, pausing as she reached the heavy front door. She looked back over her shoulder, her lips curving into a terrible, beautiful smile. Oh, Dexter? One more thing before I go. What? The official investigation into the SSS-ranked gate incident has finally been closed, she whispered, her voice carrying a chilling trace of amusement. It turns out the gate was not misclassified by accident. Someone intentionally altered the records to trap those 3 girls inside that dungeon permanently. She let out a soft, mocking chuckle. If they wanted them dead back then, you might want to ask yourself, will they want to finish the job now? It turns out the gate was not misclassified by accident. Someone intentionally altered the records to trap those 3 girls inside that dungeon permanently. She let out a soft, mocking chuckle. If they wanted them dead back then, you might want to ask yourself, will they want to finish the job now? Without waiting for his response, she stepped out of the house, her bodyguards closing the heavy door behind her. Dexter stood frozen in the middle of the living room. From the table, Mira let out a cold, sharp snort. If you hadn't realized that already, husband, then you are even dumber than I thought. From the start to the finish, she hadn't once glanced at Lady Ashford. Her eyes closed as though she was sleeping in the wheelchair. Dexter stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the closed front door. Valentina's words had confirmed his worst fears. The SSS rank gate disaster was not as simple as they said. It was a targeted assassination attempt to wipe out the talents of the 3 families all at once. And now that the 3 girls were living together in a defenseless, run-down bungalow, it would be even simpler to kill them. He needed to grow stronger, fast. With his newly awakened E-rank mana affinity and the flame demon bloodline, he had a solid foundation. But he had no formal combat techniques, and he could not afford to purchase expensive Monster Nexus cores to accelerate his cultivation without a hero license. To get a license, he would have to register with the local hero guild, undergo a physical test, and successfully clear a trial dungeon. But the fastest way to build his power was still through the system. He needed to take care of his wives, provide for them, and earn more investments. The next 3 days passed in a quiet, steady rhythm. Dexter woke at 4:30 a.m. every day. He showered, dressed, and began cooking breakfast. The meals were simple: rice porridge, eggs, vegetables, but he added a thread of mana to each one, just like he had with the first nourishing meal. At 6 a.m. he woke the women. Mira was the easiest. She was always awake before he came for her, sitting in her wheelchair by the window, staring at nothing. He'd push her to the bathroom, help her with her morning routine, and then wheel her to the kitchen. Lyra required text messages. He'd type, wake up on his phone and hold it in front of her face, then gently tap her until she opened her eyes. Then he'd give her the glasses, after which everything else was easy. Celine was the hardest. She didn't wish to wear the glasses and thought it might be humiliating, but Lyra seemed to have said something to her, so she reluctantly wore them on the 3rd day. Breakfast was eaten in silence. Dexter fed Mira. Lyra fed herself, though she ate enough for 3 people and he was constantly having to cook more. Celine required guidance and Lyra assisted her with that. Mid-morning, after breakfast, Dexter prepared the 5-body nourishing meal for the day. Each meal took between 2 to 4 hours to cook, depending on the recipe. Dexter rotated through the meals, 1 per day, following the recipe manual's recommended schedule. He fed each meal to the women and watched for changes. Myra's pain levels decreased gradually. The Serenity Bangle helped, but the meals were making a difference too. After 3 days, he saw in the system that her chronic nerve pain had dropped from 6 out of 10 to about 5.2/10. Not a huge change, but noticeable. Lyra's appetite remained enormous, but her mood seemed slightly more stable. Celine's seizures didn't stop, but the frost sense Dexter had acquired let him anticipate them and adjust the serum in advance, reducing the seizures by a lot. Afternoon. After the nourishing meal, Dexter worked with Mira on physical therapy. Her muscles were atrophying, and if he didn't act, she'd lose what little function she had left. He didn't know if the meals would eventually repair her nerves enough for her to move again, but he wasn't going to wait and find out. Mira hated it. "This is useless and humiliating," she said through gritted teeth as he bent her left arm at the elbow. "Unhand me, you pervert." "Yes, I'm a pervert," Dexter replied. "What's the use when we're going to die in a few days? This is for when you will be able to walk again." She glared at him. Even the #1 geneticist in the city couldn't do anything. "What makes you think you can?" "The system." Of course Dexter wasn't stupid enough to blurt it out. While he worked with Mira, Lyra sat nearby and watched curiously. Late afternoon, Dexter trained in the backyard. The space was small, but it was enough for basic practice. He'd cleared away the debris and set up a makeshift training area with a punching bag he'd bought from a second-hand store. He practiced basic punches. Jabs, crosses, hooks, uppercuts. The movements were crude as he had no formal combat training, but he was learning. He practiced kicks too. His legs were stronger than his arms as the flame demon bloodline seemed to favor lower body power. Then he tried to use his abilities. Flame burst step was the easiest. He activated it and the world blurred and he appeared at another location in a split second. The speed was disorienting, but he was getting better at controlling it. He could now choose a specific destination instead of just launching himself forward blindly. Flame slash was harder. Evening. Dinner, more simple food, more silence. Then bedtime. Dexter helped each woman to the bedroom. Mira in her wheelchair, Lyra guiding Celine. He helped Mira into bed, arranged the blankets around Celine, and made sure Lyra was comfortable. Then he retreated to his own room and cultivated until sleep claimed him. This happened for 3 days and the rewards he got were astronomical. He broke through to Tier 3 Awakened Hero stage the next morning. Dexter headed to the backyard, practicing his punches, when he heard something. His enhanced hearing picked it up immediately. He turned just as a girl climbed over the low fence that separated his backyard from the neighbors. She was about 16, with messy brown hair and a face full of freckles. "You're the guy from the news," she said. "The one who married the 3 cripple." The afternoon sun beat down on the neighborhood, making the air shimmer with heat. A dog barked from across the street as a car passed. Bang! 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 Rhythmic punching noises sounded out from the backyard of a small bungalow. The punching swayed as a young man relentlessly punched at the bag with 2 jabs, a cross and a hook. He was wearing a gray wife beater that was soaked through with sweat. He raised his fists again. Jab, cross, hook. That young man is Dexter. After 2 hours of grilling, he felt he was setting a hang of the whole punching thing. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and drank an enormous glass of water. "You're doing it wrong." Dexter almost choked in surprise. He lowered the water and glanced up at the fence line. A girl was sitting on top of the wooden fence that separated his backyard from the neighbor's property. She looked completely comfortable, as if sitting on a narrow wooden fence was the most natural thing in the world. She looked 16, maybe 17. Red messy hair, tied back with a strip of cloth. Freckles scattered across her nose and cheeks like someone had flicked paint at her face. Green eyes that shone like a cat's eye. She wore a simple blue dress with a white apron, which meant she was either baking at home right now or working at one. "Excuse me," Dexter said. "The punch." She pointed at the punching bag. "You're leading with your shoulder. That's why you keep losing your balance slightly after the hook." Dexter stared at her. "How long have you been watching?" "For 10 minutes, give or take," she casually said. "You were very loud. I can hear you grunting from my kitchen." Dexter felt heat crawl up his neck. He hadn't realized anyone could hear him. The girl swung her legs and dropped from the fence, and landed on the ground with a soft thud. She was shorter than him by a few inches, but she carried herself with a confidence that made her seem bigger. "I'm Tessa Wren. I live next door." She jerked her thumb over her shoulder. "My dad owns the bakery on the corner." "Oh, Dexter wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. I'm Dexter. I know. She said it blandly, without excitement or judgment. Everyone knows. Her mouth was quite sharp and faster than her brain. The bastard prince with crippled wives. She tilted her head, studying him. That's what everyone in the neighborhood is calling you. Dexter's face hardened slightly. Is that so? It is. Tessa walked past him to the punching bag and gave it a light tap with her knuckles. Barely moved. The old ladies at the market think you're a scandal. The men think you're either crazy or brilliant. And what do kids like you think? Dexter asked. The kids think you're interesting. She looked back at him. And I think you're bad at punching. Dexter suddenly chuckled. I guess I owe you a thanks then. You're welcome. Tessa turned around and touched the fence. All of a sudden, she leapt up and landed on the narrow top wood like a cat. The fence wasn't even 2 inches wide, but she stood on it as if it were solid ground. Here is how you punch. Her voice suddenly turned serious as she clenched her fists, then started shadow boxing. Power comes from the ground and the waist, she said. Not the arm. The arm is just the delivery system. The real punch starts in your feet. She gestured at the bag. Try it. Dexter looked at her for a moment. Then he turned to the punching bag, set his feet, and threw a hook. This time he led with his hip. He rotated his waist, transferred his weight, and let his fist follow the momentum. Bang! It sounded like a sharp crack as his fist struck the punching bag. Dexter raised an eyebrow in surprise. You're a fast learner, Tessa smiled. Dexter clenched and then threw another hook, then another. Each one landed with that same sharp crack, sending the bag swinging harder and harder. The difference was quite incredible. He turned to Tessa. Where did you learn that? She shrugged. You learn a thing or two in this neighborhood. People here aren't as simple as they seem. Dexter squinted. He focused on her, trying to read her energy waves. Everyone who absorbs mana emits an energy wave that others can feel to determine their power level. Just like how you look at someone to determine if he's insane or not. Well, unless they're hiding it, that is. But Tessa was like a calm lake with no ripple. Dexter frowned. He couldn't get a reading on her at all, which either meant she's a normal human or she's a whole realm higher than him. But he was certain of one thing. She was a hero. You're a hero, he said. Tessa's expression didn't change. Am I? Awakened or super? I'm just an ordinary girl with no energy to read. She shrugged. Ordinary girls can't stand on a 2-inch fence rail without falling. Tessa smiled an astonishing smile. Maybe I just have good balance. Dexter stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. She wasn't going to tell him. Fine. He had bigger problems. You're training to become a hero, aren't you? Tessa suddenly asked. Something like that. Dexter turned back to the punching bag and resumed his fisting, but this time, he reduced his striking force. She tilted her head again. You'll probably die in your first dungeon. Probably. But you're still going anyway. I have to. Dexter glanced at the house. Through the kitchen window, he could see the faint outline of someone sitting at the table. Lyra, probably. Tessa was quiet for a moment. The sound of traffic, dog barking, and Dexter's punch filled the silence. My mother was a hero. Her voice lowered softly. My mother was a hero. Tessa's voice lowered softly. She died in a D-rank Cyclops dungeon when I was 10. Dexter paused and he looked at her. She was a B-rank hero. Tessa's green eyes were fixed on the ground. Strong enough to clear D-rank dungeons in her sleep, everyone said. But dungeons don't care about ranks. One wrong step and she never came home. I'm sorry. Don't be. Tessa looked up, and her eyes were dry. Heroing isn't as glorious as the Hero Association makes it out to be. It's ugly and dangerous, and most people who try it end up dead or worse. The ones who survive are either lucky, talented, or both. She studied him. You're neither. Thanks. Tessa guffawed at his reply. Come by the bakery tomorrow morning. We're preparing our special honey buns with secret glaze. They're good for recovery. She paused, looking back at him. Before Dexter could respond, She dropped down on the other side of the fence and disappeared into the neighbor's yard. Dexter stood in his backyard, staring at the empty fence. The girl was definitely not simple, but she'd helped him, and she hadn't asked for anything in return. He shook his head and turned back to the punching bag. He spent the next hour throwing hooks using the method she'd shown him. By the time he went back inside, the sun was setting and Dexter was sweaty and exhausted but not felt really good. Mira was sitting by the kitchen table with her eyes closed. Not even married for a month and you're already talking to pretty young girls. Dexter paused in the doorway, a drop of sweat falling from his chin to the floor, and he grinned. Myra's expression was flat. Her voice was even flatter, but there seemed to be some resemblance to amusement. Should I be jealous, husband? Dexter chuckled and walked to the sink, turning on the tap to wash his hands. She's 16, Mira. And I'm crippled, not blind. Myra's eyes followed him as he moved. She was looking at you like you're a lost puppy she wants to adopt. Dexter dried his hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. She's just a neighbor. Just a neighbor who happens to know how to throw a perfect punch and stand on a fence rail without falling. Mira remained silent but then spoke. Be careful who you trust, Dexter. Everyone has an angle, even you. Dexter froze where he stood. The last 3 words rang in his ears. She was telling him she knew that he had an ulterior motive, but she might have misunderstood. What do you think is my motive? Mira sneered. What is every man's motive? Dexter stared at her, then he burst out laughing, much to the surprise of Mira. He laughed for a good 2 minutes before he finally recovered. You can't begin to imagine how wrong you are. Remember to call me when you want to use the bathroom. I heard it causes sickness if you hold your pee for long. Then he left for the shower. He washed up and changed into clean clothes. Then he sat on his air mattress and pulled up his system interface. 10,000x investment multiplier system. 10 kills to upgrade to 100x multiplier. Investment targets. Mira Calloway, wife. Lyra Vance, wife. Celine Frost, wife. Jasmine Constance, ex-girlfriend. Name: Dexter Ashford. Talent: enhanced hearing, rank. Occupation: rank 1 master foodsmith. Peak: bloodline: flame demon, royal grade. Mana affinity: C rank. Rank: awakened hero / meta hero. Level 3. Attributes: strength 75, agility 85, plus 10 hidden needle. Physique 75, mana 75. Meditation technique: starlight meditation technique, mortal grade. Bloodline skills: scorching fury, flame demon transformation, flame slash, flame burst step. Relics: serenity bangles ×2, type 2 relic. Tranquility bangle, type 2 relic. Self-recharging AI smart glasses, type 1 relic. Hidden splinter needle hairpin ×3, type 2 relic. Hidden splinter needle hairpin. Grade: type 2 relic. Category: hidden weapon. Durability: 100/100. Attributes: agility +10. Passive effects: silent flight. Produces no sound and conceals its aura while in flight. Aimlock accuracy: auto-correct throw path when targeting close to a fatal point. Active skill: ghost needle. Cooldown: 30 seconds. Throws the hairpin at tremendous speed. Ignores 40% of the target's physical defense. Deals greatly increased damage when striking a vital point. Automatically returns to the user after the attack. He had bought Scene and Hairpin as one of their wedding gifts and gave it to the girls. The system actually produced a Type 2 relic as investment returns to him. Right now, his mana affinity has increased to C rank, which meant his cultivation speed will increase as he can now easily absorb mana. And his strength was 7.5 times higher than a normal human being. However, this is the base strength for a Tier 3 awakened. For each tier broken through, one gains 25 extra attributes across all the stats. For Tier 1, their strength, agility, physique and mana increase from 10 to 25, Tier 2 is another 25 stats making 50 attribute points across all stats, and Tier 3 making 75 attribute points across. 3 days ago he was an F rank, nobody with stats of 25 across his board. Now, his growth was terrifying and he had advanced to level 3. If anyone in the Hero Association saw his progress rate, they'd either call it a miracle or assume he had some sort of secret. But this speed still wasn't enough. The sound was very faint, but Dexter's enhanced hearing caught it from 5 blocks away. A long, wailing tone like that of a siren. Dexter's confused face immediately changed as he realized what it was. A monster outbreak siren. Every city in the country had them, warning sirens designed to alert the population when a dungeon breach occurred. Dungeons were supposed to be contained, sealed behind gates that the Hero Association monitored. But sometimes, a gate destabilized. A new dungeon popped up or monsters broke through their cages. It was always unexpected and always caused death or injury. Dexter groaned softly. He had been expecting assassins, but didn't think there would be an actual monster outbreak. He closed his eyes as he activated his ability. Suddenly, every sound within a 200-meter radius flowed through his ears. Boom! Hull! Bang! 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 Help me! It's squelch! Dexter's face paled slightly, and the last sound he heard was of a skull cracking and exploding like watermelon squeezed too tight. The siren was coming from the east, from the direction of the merchant quarter, and it was getting louder, which meant the breach was spreading. I hope it doesn't reach here, Dexter thought nervously. From what he heard, the monsters were likely wolves, but he wasn't too sure. Most breaches were contained quickly by the Hero Association, which had response teams that could be deployed within minutes. So the sirens were more of a precaution instead. But most wasn't all. Dexter had lived long enough to know not to depend on his luck. He immediately started to move as he locked the back door, then ran to the front door and locked it. Then started with the windows, locking every single window in the house, just in case. He moved the fridge to the front door and barricaded the back door with the dining chair. Then he checked the locked doors once more to ensure no mistakes. Myra's quiet time was ruined by him running around the house. She opened her eyes and glared at him as he passed her wheelchair for the 7th time. Her brows furrowed in irritation as she asked, "What are you doing?" Dexter didn't stop moving. "It's hopefully nothing, but I'm hearing the outbreak siren in the distance. It's better to be safe than sorry." He went to Lyra, who was watching him from the kitchen doorway with a calm expression. "There might be a monster outbreak nearby," he said, speaking clearly so the glasses could translate. "I need you to go to the bedroom, just in case." Lyra suddenly reached for something. It was her phone. Her fingers moved as a robotic voice spoke from the frame of her glasses. "We are already dead. The monsters would be doing us a favor." Dexter stared at her, stunned. The idea that death would be a mercy made him sympathetic. She'd been trapped in silence and darkness for 3 years, unable to hear, unable to speak, unable to do anything but exist. Of course she'd had thoughts like that. Dexter didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Lyra looked at him for a moment longer. Then she turned and walked to the bedroom without another word. Dexter exhaled and went to Mira. "Come on," he said, gripping the handles of her wheelchair. "Did I tell you I wanted to move?" Myra's voice was irritated. "Did I ask your permission?" Myra's lips curled. "You know, you're becoming quite abusive." "I heard you like abusive men," Dexter replied without thinking. The words left his mouth before his brain could stop them. The moment they were out, Dexter wished he could take them back. Myra's face changed. The mocking irritation on her face changed as her expression turned blank and then chilling cold. A raging fire replaced them as the crimson eyes locked in Dexter. Myra's father was rumored to be abusive. Dexter didn't know the full story and was simply told to have been a senseless rumor that came out after the news of her being a cripple came out. He thought it was just a rumor, but from Myra's reaction, it was most likely true. He opened his mouth to apologize, but then he heard something. From 2 blocks away, the siren's wail was suddenly drowned out by other sounds. Gunshots, screams and explosions, then a very loud and sharp howl. It was the sound of a monster. and it was very close. Dexter's face changed. He grabbed Myra's wheelchair and pushed her fast towards the bedroom. "Lyra!" he called out as he reached the door. "Lock the door from behind." He wheeled Myra inside, positioned her chair against the far wall, and stepped back into the hallway. Then closed the door shut and locked it from the outside. He waited, but there was no sound of a lock clicking from inside. Dexter's eye twitched. Are these girls flirting with death? He wanted to roar in anger. He'd just told them there was a monster outbreak. He'd just told them to lock the door. And they couldn't even manage that one simple task? He forced himself to calm down. Getting angry wouldn't help. He needed to focus. Fine, it doesn't really matter. He turned and ran to the kitchen. Part of their wedding gift, the pile of boxes that had come from the three families, had contained a decorative broadsword. It was a ceremonial blade with an intricate design made to look beautiful, however, it wasn't meant for battle. Dexter had never bothered to move it, and it had been leaning against the wall in the kitchen since the first night. He grabbed it and frowned. The metal was cheap, the balance was terrible, and the edge couldn't even cut through bread. But it was solid steel, and right now, solid steel was better than bare hands. He also grabbed 2 kitchen knives from the drawer and tucked one into his waistband at his back and held the other in his left hand, the broadsword in his right. Then he stood in the hallway and listened carefully. Suddenly his face changed as the kitchen window shattered. The Type 1 protective window bar shattered like paper. With his enhanced hearing, the world seemed to become a map of sound. He could hear the outbreak in detail now. People fighting, the sounds of gunfire, the roar of hero abilities activating, the crash of bodies hitting walls and vehicles. But mixed in with the human sounds were the monster sounds. Dark hounds. Dexter's body stiffened as he recognized the monster's howls. These are ordinary mutated beasts with strength ranging from 3 stars to 7 stars. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing about them. The most frightening thing about them was that they came in packs. Dozens of them. Sometimes hundreds. The fast and aggressive pack hunters could tear through civilian neighborhoods like paper, and they were getting closer. Awoo! Dexter's grip tightened on the broadsword and cold sweat dripped down his forehead and ran along his jaw as his heart pounded rapidly. He inhaled slowly, using the breathing method from the Starlight meditation technique to clear his mind and regulate his heartbeat. Then his ears trembled. Dexter suddenly ran to the kitchen window and positioned himself beside it. As though in cue, bang! A claw tore through the reinforced iron bars on the kitchen window. The metal screeched as 3 thick, black claws easily ripped through the bars like they were made of tin, and a massive head popped inside. It was a dark hound. The beast looked like a mutated simple version of a dog. It was about 1.5 meters tall and larger than a lion with thick black fur and yellow eyes. There were 4 star-like patterns on its forehead signifying it was a 4-star mutated beast. Droll escaped its massive jaws and its teeth were long and curved like hunting knives. Dexter's eyes turned cold, holding his breath. He stabbed forward with his entire strength. Chee! Hot, foul-smelling blood spilt out in all directions, spattering out there on the kitchen floor and wall. Squelch! The hound thrashed, its claws scraping against the window frame. Dexter twisted the blade and pulled it free, and the creature's body immediately went limp, half in and half out of the window. Requirement for system activation completed. Requirement: kill 3 humans or 3 mutated beasts. March 3rd. System initialization completed. Congratulations on activating the Slaughter Extraction System. Slaughter Extraction System. Extracted plus 3 strength plus 2 mana. He didn't have time to read the notification or ponder why his strength had suddenly increased as another sound entered his ears. Dexter dropped the bloody broadsword and picked up the second kitchen knife from his waistband. 1 knife in each hand. He hurried to the front door and his face changed as he rolled to the side. In a split second, the door exploded inward as a massive dark hound burst through the ruined doorframe, letting the wood splinter. Hool! The howl shook the walls and rattled the window. Dexter stomped his feet on the wall. Using its momentum, he pivoted, as he stabbed the knife into its throat from underneath. The blade punched through the soft tissue of the neck and into the brain. The hound instantly collapsed and immediately died. SES. Extracted +3 strength, +2 mana. Dexter yanked the knife free and rolled to the side as 2 more hounds came through the destroyed door. They were both level 5 mutated beasts. They immediately spread out as they charged at him from 2 different directions. One went left and one went right, trying to flank him with astonishing speed. Dexter's face changed as these 2 beasts were even faster than he could keep up with. He activated his enhanced hearing to the fullest as a blur flashed to his left. Dexter heard the wind shift and he instantly dodged left, letting the claw swipe through empty air. As the claw missed him by a centimeter, he suddenly moved as he sliced the underside of its front leg, but the blade wasn't sharp enough to fully slice through it and only caused a deep wound, deep enough to make it bleed. The dark hound yelped and stumbled. At that moment, the dark hound on the left came immediately after. Dexter instantly dropped low as the claw sliced some of his hair. His other knife moved as he slashed at the hound's belly as it passed. The knife cut through fur and skin, and the hound snarled in pain, blood dripping from the wound. But they weren't dead, and more were coming. Dexter suddenly heard another sound from behind him. Another dark hound had actually crawled through the kitchen window. His face changed as he quickly turned to the back. But it was too late. Bang! The dark hound's claw slammed into his back. The impact was like getting hit by a car. Pain exploded across his shoulder blades, and Dexter was sent flying across the hallway, slamming heavily into the wall as he slid to the floor. His grip loosened and both knives clattered out of his hands. For a moment, the world spun and his vision blurred as his back screamed with agony. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to push through the pain. He raised his head and then saw the hound that hit him wasn't attacking again. He saw its forehead and a 6-pointed star-like pattern on it. 6-star mutated beast. Dexter's face paled, and he knew he might not survive today. Should I escape? With flame burst bloodline skill and his enhanced hearing ability, he was certain he could escape unscathed. But the women, his face kept changing as his brain fired up rapidly. His brain told him that his only chance at survival was to escape. There's no way a Tier 3 awakened hero can kill a 6-star mutated beast. Every level provides at least 25 stats, which meant the 6-star mutated beast has at least 150 stats in strength alone. Dexter only has a pitiful 75 stats in strength. The gap was almost double. If he runs now, he could survive, but his wives. Dexter only had a pitiful 75 stats in strength. The gap was almost double. If he ran now, he could survive, but the girls, his wives, would definitely die. He had only known them for almost a week, but he didn't even know what they liked. Therefore, they were basically strangers. Not to mention Lyra's appetite. She could eat a family of 3's daily meal in one sitting. Despite taking his time to cook extra portions for her, she never thanked him. Celine basically treats him like he was filth from the dirtiest slum and flinches when he gets close to her. Mira is the worst of them all. Despite taking care of her every need, she insults and undermines his ego every chance she gets, even when he bathes and washes her every single day. The 3 women never once expressed their thanks and treat him like nothing. Therefore, it would be unreasonably, incredibly, and ridiculously stupid to risk his life for them when they are basically strangers and log weight. However, as he saw the beast moving toward the bedroom door, toward Mira, Lyra, and Celine, time seemed to slow down and every sound seemed to fade in the background as he heard the breathing of the 3 women. He recognized Myra's taking in a deep breath of air as though it was her last and then exhaling. He recognized Lyra's footsteps as she walked towards the door, impatiently awaiting what was to come. He recognized Celine's slow beating heart suddenly picking up as she whispered her longest words. It's finally here. The 3 had actually accepted their death and were fully embracing it. Dexter's face flushed in sadness, but his heart lit up in inexplicable rage. Rage that the girls had given up after this small amount of setback. How could they be so selfish? Do they know how many people were born deaf and mute? Do they know how many were born crippled, or how many were born blind, or how many were born with chronic pain? And yet, those people managed to live life to the fullest, finding meaning and happiness in this world, and even managed to find love. Yet, these three selfish princesses got to live with their senses intact for so many years. Not only that, the three were born talented and had everything served to them on a silver platter, but when they suffered this setback, they actually wanted to take their own lives. How can you be so selfish? Dexter roared in anger and fury. The rage burned so hot it burned away the pain. Scorching fury. Boom! A surge of energy struck him like a thunderbolt. His blood literally ignited as his magma-like blood flooded through every fiber of his body. His muscles trembled and swelled as his strength increased by 50%. His eyes seemed to burn with flame, with his irises flickering with actual fire as his hair floated upward. The dark hound struck at the bedroom door and its claw easily pierced a hole in the door. One more strike and it would break through. Dexter suddenly appeared beside the massive hound and thrust his two blades right through its neck. Ding! The hound actually turned around so fast it slashed and parried the blade attack. Dexter felt his arm trembled and he gritted his teeth. The beast possessed 150 agility stats, and despite Dexter activating Scorching Fury, his strength and agility capped at 112.5. There was still a vast difference between the two of them. Before he could react, the dark hound's mouth opened so wide it could fit a watermelon blurred as it flashed towards him. If he doesn't move, his head will be chopped off. But even with Scorching Fury, his speed was still too slow to react to his head being bitten off. Dexter's eyes widened into a panic as he watched the maws of the dark hound wrap around his head. Flame burst. 30 points of mana burned and Dexter's feet released a blast of heat waves as Dexter's agility increased by 300% for 1 second. Bang! Dexter watched as the massive mouth of the dark hound slowed down incredibly. Dexter didn't retreat. Instead, he turned towards the side of the beast. Its mouth was still wide open, but its eyes actually reacted to Dexter's incredibly fast movement. Dexter raised the knives and stabbed them directly through the eyes of the dark hound with all his strength. The beast could track Dexter's movement, but just like the previous Dexter, it couldn't react and could only watch as the blade stabbed into its left eye and straight to its skull. SES. Extracted +6 strength, +5 physique, +3 mana. The beast froze and then collapsed in an instant. Ding! The notification barely registered, but Dexter was already moving. The two wounded hounds from before already stood up. One was limping while the other was circling him, snarling and circling, looking for an opening. Awoo! Awoo! The two beasts actually let loose a loud howl. Dexter's face couldn't be any blacker. He moved with incredible speed, slashing the throat of the first dark hound and using his momentum, he stabbed his blade through the skull of the second dark hound, pinning it to the wall like a decoration. Hearing the howl, dark hounds began converging rapidly around the house. 2 level 6 burst through the kitchen window, but before they could land, 2 emerald and almost invisible needle pins tore through the air like bullets, heading for the nose of the first dark hound and the second needle pin heading for the cheek of the second. If hit, it would probably be non-fatal. It was truly a bad throw. But strangely, the needles changed trajectory in midair and stabbed into the eyes of the dark hounds. Chi! Chi! SES. Extracted +10 strength, +15 physique, +3 mana, +8 agility. Hidden Splinter Needle Hairpin. Grade: Type 2 Relic. Category: Hidden Weapon. Durability: 100/100. Attributes: Agility +10. Passive effects: Silent Flight. Produces no sound and conceals its aura while in flight. Aimlock accuracy. Autocorrects the throw path when targeting close to a fatal point. Active skill: Ghost Needle. Cooldown: 30 seconds. Throws the hairpin at tremendous speed. Ignores 40% of the target's physical defense. Deals greatly increased damage when striking a vital point. Automatically returns to the user after the attack. The 2 6-star beasts collapsed on the kitchen floor, sliding forward due to the momentum of their lunge. Ding! You've leveled up to Tier 4. Dexter didn't care about the notification as another dark hound burst through the kitchen doorway, then another at the destroyed front door. He pulled the knife from the dead hound's neck and gripped it in his left hand, then picked up the broadsword beneath his feet. The first hound lunged. Dexter didn't try to dodge this time. He parried the claw strike with the broadsword as the impact sent vibrations up his arm, but scorching fury gave him the strength to hold his ground, then activated flame burst step. Whoosh! He vanished like a puff of smoke. One moment he was in front of the hound, the next he was beside it, appearing so fast that the creature's eyes couldn't track him. He slashed its head off clean. The body dropped. The head rolled. The second hound came from behind. Dexter heard it and spun, bringing the broadsword around in a wide arc. The blade caught the hound across the chest, cutting deep into its ribs. It yelped and stumbled back. The third hound attacked from the kitchen doorway. Dexter flame burst stepped again, appearing to its left, and drove the knife into its eye. The creature shrieked and collapsed. The fourth hound hesitated, but Dexter didn't. In his anger, he lunged forward and attacked. His speed was fast and his momentum was so oppressive that the mutated beast actually turned tail and ran, but Dexter caught up with it, killing it in 2 strikes. The dark hound kept converging and Dexter was like a mad barbarian, using everything in his arsenal to kill. The more he killed, the stronger he became. By the time heroes from the Hero Association arrived, Darkhound corpses filled the entire house, both inside and outside of it. Dexter stood in front of his gate. Darkhound corpses and intestines littered the ground around his house, a few still twitching in their final moments of death. The smell of blood filled the air with a faint smell of sulfur coming from Dexter's body. Right now, Dexter's shirt was torn, revealing the deep claw marks the 6-star hound had left on his back. Blood was caked under his fingernails and his arms were streaked red from wrist to elbow. In his left hand was a steel rod he used to kill the last beast after the knife snapped inside a 5-star monster's skull. From far away, the wail of emergency sirens cut through the night, getting closer. Heroes in proper combat gear were already engaging beasts in the streets, and he could hear the booming sounds of abilities activating, the crash of bodies hitting vehicles, the sharp reports of gunfire from the association's armed response units. Dexter exhaled slowly. He let himself lean against the gate post as he breathed in. He looked around the neighborhood. The fighting was concentrated on the eastern side of the street. But here, on his side of the block, something didn't add up. Directly to his left, a blue house with a cracked driveway was untouched, and also to his right, a cream-colored 2-story building with a garden fence was also untouched. Across the street, 2 more houses, the same thing. Then he looked at Tessa's house, the same thing too. Dexter frowned as he stared at the 4 houses. The dark hounds had swarmed this neighborhood like a flood. But those 4 houses that surrounded his bungalow were not affected. What is this situation? It was like the beasts didn't dare go near them. They arrived 30 seconds later. The Silver Rank response team moved through the neighborhood, quickly dispatching the monsters around. The team slowed as they approached Dexter's yard. The house was almost thoroughly destroyed, with beast corpses in the kitchen, the yard, and the living room. There was blood everywhere, claw marks in the wall and the kitchen window destroyed. And in the center of it all was a young man, covered head to toe in blood. The Silver Rank team leader was a tall woman in polished silver armor. Her eyes went from the corpses to Dexter. He was clearly a Tier 4 awakened. How had he killed a 6-star beast? One of her team members leaned in and whispered something. The woman's eyes widened slightly as she recognized who he was. The bastard who married the cripple. That guy did this? You did this? She asked. Dexter's tired gaze met her eyes and automatically wanted to reply. No, your grandfather. Did you see anyone else here? But he stopped himself and managed to reply. Yes. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she brought her fist to her chest and saluted a hero's salute that's not meant for civilians. Dexter blinked. He hadn't expected that. Name, surname, and level? She asked. For the report. Dexter Ashford, awakened hero. Tier 4. Get the medic over here, she called over her shoulder. This man has a dozen open wounds. The team medic rushed forward, already pulling supplies from his kit, and started working on Dexter. The Hero Association secured the neighborhood within 20 minutes. The remaining Dark Hounds were either killed or driven back toward the breach zone, where higher-rank heroes were working to seal the gate instability. Dexter was escorted to a medical tent set up at the edge of the evacuation zone. Finally alone, he opened his system notifications. They'd been piling up for the last hour. He'd been too focused on survival, but now, in the silence of the tent, he let them flood in. Investment multiplier system activated. Investment detected. Physical, mental, emotional, security. Current multiplier, 100x. Calculating returns. Return 1. Compressed cultivation, 1 year. A wave of energy slammed into his chest. Dexter grunted in pain and pleasure as he grabbed the edge of the cot as mana flooded through his body. His mana core expanded, his meridians widened, and he broke through to Tier 5, Tier 6, Tier 7 before the wave finally subsided. Return 2. Mana affinity upgraded, C rank A rank. Energy instantly started to flow through him like water through an open pipe. It was then he felt the difference. It was truly staggering. He could feel mana in the air now without the need to concentrate and meditate. It was everywhere, and for the first time it was actually his to use. Return 3. Talent upgraded, E rank D rank. Enhanced hearing. The range of his enhanced hearing doubled, and the clarity improved in ways he couldn't quantify yet. Return 4. Bloodline upgraded. Royal grade origin grade. New bloodline. Berserk Flame Demon Bloodline. Origin grade. Dexter's eyes widened. Top 100,000 bloodlines, mutated grade. Common people have this grade of bloodlines. Top 10,000 royal grade. This typically rare and wealthy and powerful families built legacies on these. Top 1,000 origin grade. Had never been found, and his had just jumped from royal to origin. Berserk Flame Demon Bloodline. Origin grade. Passive. Fire resistance increased to 50%. Flame will now generates ambient heat that weakens nearby enemies. Active. Scorching Fury. Strength increase upgraded from 50% to 80%. Duration extended to 5 minutes. Active. Flame Burst Step. Speed increase upgraded from 300% to 500%. Duration extended to 2 seconds. Active. New Berserk Form. When health drops below 20%, enter a controlled rage state. All stats increase by 100%. Pain receptors shut down. Duration, 10 minutes. Cooldown, 48 hours. Active. New Flame Demon's Wrath. Unleash a concentrated blast of demonic fire in a 15-meter radius. Damage scales with missing health. The less health you have, the more devastating the attack. Locked. Flame Demon Transformation. Requires higher cultivation level to unlock. Dexter's hands were trembling in pure happiness. But that wasn't all. Return 5. Culinary Rank Advanced. Rank 1 Master Chef, Rank 2 Grandmaster Chef. Early. Effect. All meals prepared by host now contain strong special effects. Enchanted meals will be significantly more potent. Meals can now actively accelerate healing, boost cultivation, and purify toxins. Return 6. Martial Art Acquired. Extreme Slaughtering Demon Body. Tier 3. Description. Transform mana into slaughter energy to temper the body. Progressively strengthens muscle fiber, bone density, and skin toughness through combat. Upon perfection, the body becomes impervious to all weapons. Physique doubles. Power of any weapon used is doubled. Return 7. Grade 3 Restoration Pill ×1. Effect. Randomly heals a single injury in the body. Can restore damaged nerves, fractured bones, or severed meridians. One-time use. Dexter's heart stopped. Restore damaged nerves. His mind immediately went to his 3 wives. But he only had 1 pill. Return 8. Type 3 Macrosplicing Saber. Macrosplicing Saber. Relic Grade, Type 3. Category, Saber. Durability, 300/300. Attributes, plus 35 strength, plus 25 agility, plus 20 vitality. Special effects. Macro splice. Slices through large targets with unnatural precision. Greatly increases damage against armored enemies, fortifications, and colossal monsters. Spatial cleave. The blade releases a compressed crescent slash that travels up to 25 meters before dissipating. Structural severance. Attacks identify and exploit structural weak points, reducing an enemy's defense by 30% for 5 seconds. Edge of ruin. Each consecutive strike increases blade sharpness and damage by 8%, stacking up to 5 times. Relic rend. Deals 40% bonus damage against relic armor, magical barriers, and summoned constructs. Ultimate skill. Macro dissection. Consumes a large amount of mana to unleash a single overwhelming slash. Everything within a 50-meter line is cut apart on the molecular and magical level, ignoring 60% of physical defense and destroying weaker barriers instantly. Passive. Unbreaking edge. The saber never dulls and automatically repairs minor damage over time. A real weapon, an actual Type 3 weapon. The kind of relic that meta-human and superhuman rank heroes spent fortunes to acquire. Return 9. Type 3 Protective Amulet. Effect. Wearer receives a passive barrier that absorbs damage up to peak superhero, regenerates over 24 hours after breaking. Return 10. Type 3 House Protection Talisman. Effect. When placed on a dwelling, creates a barrier that repels all entities below superhero rank at will. Monsters and hostile individuals below this threshold cannot invade the protected area. Duration. Permanent until destroyed. Dexter stared at that last one. A permanent house barrier. If he had it earlier, it could have stopped the Dark Hounds from ever reaching his door. If only he'd had it a while ago. Return 11. D-rank talent card. Echolocation. Effect. Emits high-frequency sound pulses that create a 3-dimensional map of the surrounding environment. The user can perceive terrain, walls, obstacles, moving targets, and hidden objects even in complete darkness or through smoke, fog, and similar visual obstructions. Return 12. D-rank talent card. Mana arms. Effect. Construct up to 4 additional arms using solidified mana. Each arm has 10% of the user's physical strength. Duration scales with mana reserves. Return 13. D-rank talent card. Telepathy. Effect. Speak directly into the minds of others. Can also read the surface thoughts of individuals whose cultivation level is below the user's. For extra arms. Telepathy. Ground-based sonar. These are the things that could assist his wives. Return 14. Type 3 Chain Pain Ring. Effect. Temporarily transfer any ill effect, status condition, or debuff from the user to a target. Can also be used in reverse. 10.000x Investment Multiplier System. Upgrade notification. Confirmed kills. 16 out of 100. Threshold reached. 10 kills. Multiplier tier up. 10x 100x. All future investment returns will now be calculated at 100x multiplier. Kills remaining until next upgrade. 1.000x84. This is slightly too much. This is slightly too much. Not only had he advanced by leaps and bounds, but he also got talent cards that could assist his wives and improve their living situation. Mira is paralyzed and can't move, but with the mana hands, she could use the mana hands to do a few things. Lyra can't hear or speak, but with the telepathy ability card, she could speak to them directly to their minds and hear their outward or surface thoughts. It was basically the same thing as being cured. Finally, Celine. With the echolocation talent card, she could see vibrations and map out the surrounding areas within 10 meters. These abilities to others might be worthless, but to his girls, they were everything. Not to mention his investment had increased from 10 times to over 100 times. His strength would be truly terrifying from now on. Every investment he made from this point forward would return 100 times what it would have at base. He exhaled a turbid air and opened his eyes. Whoosh! Flames seemed to dance around his eyes as he looked around with newfound clarity. 84 more kills was the next upgrade. A healer came to the tent. She was a middle-aged woman with blue eyes. She smiled when she saw him. Her talent was called Healing Hands, and when she pressed her palms against the claw marks on Dexter's back, a warm golden light seeped into his skin. The deep wound slowly began to heal rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eyes, and then the pain gradually vanished until there was nothing left. The exhaustion that had been weighing on his bones since he cancelled out Scorching Fury Bloodline skill also vanished. Dexter rotated his shoulder experimentally. There was not a single pain. Rest up a few hours and you will be good as new. She packed her things and turned to leave. Dexter didn't respond. He was watching through the tent flap as association workers hauled the Darkhound carcasses onto transport vehicles. They were taking everything. Dexter pursed his lips. He hadn't remembered to take the Nexus Fire if the beast. Nexus cores are crystallized mana essence inside each beast's heart and was very valuable, both for cultivation and for the money they'd fetch on the open market. 16 beasts meant 16 cores. At market rate, that was enough to live on for months. But it was too late. The association had already claimed jurisdiction over the entire outbreak site. One of the association officers approached him, a neat man in a pressed uniform holding a clipboard. "Mr. Ashford, you and your dependents will be transported to a nearby hotel, fully paid for by the Hero Association. You'll stay there for a minimum of 3 days while we repair the damages done to your home and monitor the neighborhood for residual gate instability." Dexter nodded and sighed in relief. He didn't have the money for repairs right now. "Someone from the Hero Association will come to meet you at the hotel in a few days regarding the beast carcass and your housing repairs." The officer paused, then added with a small nod of respect, "Thank you for your service." "You're welcome," Dexter replied. A black limousine pulled up outside the tent 20 minutes later. Association staff loaded Dexter's things, not that there was much. A few changes of clothes, the leftover food supplies, Celine's medication, and the small case containing the old Type 1 bracelets and AI glasses he'd replaced. It all fit in 2 bags. 2 men assisted his wives into the vehicle. One guided Myra's wheelchair into the spacious back compartment, securing it against the floor mounts. Another helped Lyra, who helped Celine to the vehicle. Dexter watched from outside the limousine. He looked at his 3 wives as they settled into the leather seats. Myra's eyes were forward, her expression closed. Lyra sat quietly, her hands folded, her new AI glasses dark. Celine was still, her face turned slightly away. He clenched his fists at his sides. The anger was still there. It had been burning in his chest since the outbreak. Since the moment Lyra had walked toward the door, waiting for death like the other girls. They hadn't struggled, not once. They just sat there and waited to die. He huffed and got into the limousine. The door closed behind him with a soft thud. The limousine pulled away from the tent, leaving the ruined neighborhood behind. Through the tinted windows, Dexter watched the street pass, association vehicles with flashing lights. The city was already recovering. People were already moving on. He leaned his head against the window and said nothing. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward and thick with tension. Mira suddenly opened her eyes as though she could feel his anger pressing against her skin. Her lips crisped into a knowing smile and she closed her eyes again. Lyra felt it too, and she too turned to look at Dexter through her smart glasses before looking away. Celine remained still, but she shifted uncomfortably on the seat. The hotel was called the Grand Meridian. It was the kind of place Dexter had only ever seen in movies. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and uniformed staff who acted like they'd been trained in a military academy for hospitality. At the front desk, the clerk asked if Dexter wanted connecting rooms. "No separate rooms," he replied. The clerk checked his system and shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. We're at capacity due to the monster outbreak evacuation. The only available unit is a premium suite with a single bedroom. It has a very large bed, more than enough to accommodate 4 guests." He glanced past Dexter at the 3 women behind him. There was a flash of jealousy in his eyes, but he quickly hid it. Dexter's frowned. He didn't want to stay in the same room with the girls, but now, He had no choice. "I'll take it." The clerk handed him the keycard. 20th floor. Elevators to your left. The elevator doors slid open onto the 20th floor. Without a word, Dexter wheeled Mira out into the quiet hallway. The carpet was thick and soft beneath the wheels, swallowing all sound. Behind them, Lyra gently held Celine's hand, guiding her slowly as they stepped out of the elevator together. The four of them walked in complete and heavy silence. So he stayed silent. Mira seemed to sense his mood. Every now and then she stole a glance at him from her wheelchair, her lips parting slightly as though she wanted to say something. But the words never came. Lyra noticed it too. She occasionally looked at him through her smart glasses before quietly lowering her dark eyes again. No one spoke. They reached the suite. Dexter unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room was luxurious, far beyond anything any of them had lived in recently. A spacious living room with elegant sofas, a polished dining table, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights below. A marble bathroom with a bathtub big enough for two. And beyond the living room, a single large bedroom with a bed that was, as promised, enormous. Without saying anything, Dexter wheeled Mira inside and positioned her near the window. He walked into the bedroom, examined the layout, checked the locks on the windows and other stuff. Satisfied, he walked back into the living room and picked up the room service phone. He ordered dinner for everyone, selecting dishes he thought each of them would enjoy based on what he'd observed over the past week. Mira liked rich, flavorful broths. Lyra ate enormous portions but preferred simple, hearty food. Celine hadn't shown strong preferences, but she seemed to respond well to warm, soft meals. Less than 20 minutes later, a staff member arrived with a cart covered in silver plates. "Here." Dexter tipped him a 10, then heeled the cart to the dining table and uncovered each dish carefully, arranging them neatly. "You should eat while it's still warm," he said flatly. Without waiting for a response, Dexter turned and walked toward the door. There was a perfectly comfortable sofa in the living room. He'd intended to sleep there tonight, but not yet. The elevator carried him back down to the lobby. Earlier, when they checked in, he'd noticed a small bar tucked into one corner of the ground floor. Warm amber lighting with wood and the faint sound of jazz drifting through the entrance. The bar wasn't crowded, but it wasn't empty either. Businessmen in loosened ties, a couple sharing a quiet drink, a few weary travelers staring at their phones. Dexter ignored everyone, took an empty stool at the far end of the counter, and let out a long, slow breath. The bartender approached with a friendly smile. "What can I get you?" Dexter stared at the rows of bottles for a moment. He hadn't had a drink in weeks. Before the marriage, alcohol had been his way of surviving the Ashford estate. He'd been an alcoholic, though he rarely admitted it to himself. He'd quit mostly because he couldn't afford it anymore. Then the system appeared, his wives, and somewhere along the way he'd simply forgotten that alcohol existed. "Whiskey," he said quietly. "Neat. Coming right up." A few moments later, the bartender placed a crystal tumbler before him. Dexter wrapped his fingers around the glass, then took a slow sip. The whiskey burned its way down his throat, warming his chest almost instantly. He closed his eyes. Sigh. I really missed this. It had been a while truly. Suddenly, something shifted beside him. "How long has it been?" A voice like 1,000 mystical sirens. The feminine voice sounded out from beside him. Dexter opened his eyes and glanced to his left. A beautiful woman sat 2 stools away, dark hair cascading over one shoulder, vivid green eyes watching him with quiet amusement. She looked really elegant. Dexter blinked and then glanced over his shoulder. But there was no one there. When he looked back, she covered her mouth and chuckled lightly. Realization dawned, and he gave a slightly embarrassed smile. "You were talking to me?" She chuckled. "I'd be a weirdo talking to ghosts if I wasn't." Dexter rubbed the back of his neck. "Sorry, just been stressed out a lot." "What were you asking?" The lady nodded her head and pointed at his glass. Dexter understood what she meant and replied, "Oh, it's been 3 weeks since I took a drink last." She raised her own glass, something pink and fruity. Mine is 16 hours. Dexter burst out laughing, making the girl laugh too. She extended a hand. Rachel. He shook it. Dexter. Nice to meet you. You too. They both took another sip. So, she said, turning slightly on her stool to face him. What happened today to make you break? Dexter stared into his whiskey before giving a dry chuckle. Family. She laughed softly. That bad? It's complicated. He looked at her. What about you? She sighed dramatically and raised her glass. Business. Dexter blinked. Business? Yeah. Business has been hectic and dangerous lately. He shook his head and toasted with her. To life. To tough life. They smiled and drank up. Before either of them realized it, the conversation began to flow naturally. They talked about work stress, about how adulthood somehow became exhausting overnight and how money became the most important thing. Minutes slipped by, the drinks came and went. Dexter switched from whiskey to something lighter. Rachel ordered something sweeter. The jazz played on. The bar slowly emptied around them. For the first time that day, maybe for the first time in weeks, Dexter smiled without forcing it. The conversation gradually slowed. Rachel found herself looking at him differently now, a bit warmer. More specifically, she found herself looking at his lips. Dexter noticed her gaze linger for a fraction of a second, but was a little tipsy, so he dismissed it. I really need to turn in, Rachel said, gathering her purse. I've got a meeting early tomorrow. Dexter smiled. It's been fun. And he meant it. In the span of an hour, this stranger had made him feel more like a normal human being than anything had in the past 3 weeks. She locked her eyes with his and it seemed magnetic. It's been fun, she replied. Then she suddenly leaned forward and kissed him. Dexter woke up before dawn and let out a long yawn. He was halfway out of bed, his brain already running a checklist for the kitchen, before he caught himself. He wasn't at the bungalow. There was no rice to wash and no breakfast to scramble together for the girls. Instead, he was staring at a fancy ceiling, in a hotel room that cost more per night than he used to make in a month. Right? The Grand Meridian. They were still stuck here. The monster outbreak had turned their neighborhood into a graveyard, and the Hero Association had put them here. Sigh. I could get used to this, right? He smiled as he muttered. He glanced at the clock on the nightstand. 4:03 a.m. The room was silent, filled only with the hum of the air conditioner and the soft breathing of the 3 women in the massive bed behind him. He felt a sudden, twitchy need to be busy. Usually, every morning he was always busy by this time, chopping vegetables, planning meals, but here, there was nothing to do. Since sleep was a lost cause, he sat up on the couch and shook off the grogginess. He needed to be more productive. He closed his eyes and started the starlight meditation technique. A week ago, his mana affinity had been so low that trying to use it was like trying to drink water through a solid straw. He mostly did it back then just to keep his mind calm. But things were different now. His affinity had jumped all the way to A rank, and the difference was like night and day. The moment he triggered the technique, the mana in the room seemed to rush toward him. His body drank it up, his core filling like a dry basin under a waterfall. So fast. He kept his eyes shut, trying to keep his composure, but he was genuinely shocked. If he kept this up, he'd be able to stabilize his tier 7 strength in no time. After a few minutes of feeling that energy hum through his system, his mind drifted to the other thing he'd been putting off, the demon tempering body technique. He'd gotten it as a reward, but he hadn't had a second of privacy to actually try it out. He stood up, gave his neck a quick crack, and cleared some space by pushing the coffee table aside. The instructions were simple enough: 108 forms, extreme stress, and specific mana paths. How hard could it be? He kicked his legs up into a headstand, trying to twist his body into the required shape. The first form was an absolute nightmare. It was like someone had taken the worst parts of yoga and combined them with a medieval torture device. Orhus is really difficult, Dexter grunted as he grew tired of practicing the technique. His hips screamed in protest, his spine felt like it was being twisted like a wet towel, and he had to keep his mana moving through 12 specific points at the exact same time. He lasted 10 seconds. then 15. By 20, his arms were shaking so hard he thought he might shatter his own floor. He collapsed. Damn! He wheezed, flat on his back, his shirt already soaked through with sweat. Ding! Extreme Slaughtering Demon Body, Form 1. Complete. Strength increased. Plus 1%. He stared at the ceiling, feeling like a fool, until the notification popped up. He sat up, blinking at the blue text hanging in the air. Seriously? 20 seconds of feeling like his bones were being rearranged, and he'd gained a full % of raw strength. That was insane. If he kept this up, he'd be a monster in a few weeks. Then he looked at his mana bar. Half of it was gone. Just like that. The technique didn't just train his muscles, it was literally burning his mana to build them. That was a hell of a price to pay. This thing is terrifying, he muttered. He wasn't going to get any more training in without passing out. So he grabbed a fresh shirt and decided to head outside. The walls were starting to close in on him. He needed a run. The hotel grounds were massive with tall green grass leading the path and sculptures at the entrance. Dexter jogged along the perimeter, letting the cold morning air hit his face, burning off the restless energy that had been coiling in his gut for days. He rounded a corner near the back garden, intending to finish another lap, when he saw something. 5 floors up, an old man was standing on a premium suite balcony. He looked like any other retired guy in a tank top, white hair pulled into a messy knot, moving through some kind of slow-motion workout. He was graceful, smooth, fluid, like he was moving through water as he practiced. Dexter was about to keep jogging when his system pinged. Ding! Slaughter Extraction System. Target detected. Analyzing 7th tier grade technique in progress. Would you like to continue analysis? Remain within observation range. Dexter froze. 7th tier? He'd never even heard of a 7th grade anything. Those were the kinds of things that could cause an entire war, and here was some guy, doing it on a balcony at 4 a.m. like it was a morning stretch. Without thinking, Dexter backed up to a tree, keeping his eyes locked on the balcony. The old man didn't seem to notice. He just kept moving, shifting his weight, breathing in sync with movements that looked simple but clearly weren't. Dexter's system started pulling data, mapping out the weird way the old man's mana was circulating through his meridians. 10 minutes, then 20. The old man finished with a long, slow exhale, wiped his face, and ducked back inside. Analysis progress. 5%. Only 5%? He let out a frustrated huff. At this rate, he'd have to live in these bushes for a week to get the whole thing. He looked up at the empty balcony. Every day, he thought, every chance I get, I'm taking this. The rest of the morning was a dull slog. Dexter went back upstairs, took care of the girls, and played his part in the quiet, awkward routine they'd fallen into. But his head wasn't in the room. He kept finding excuses to slip out, checking the balcony from the garden, from the lobby, from the window of the suite. Finally, in the late afternoon, he saw movement. He bolted for the back garden, hid behind a hedge, and watched. The old man practiced for another 30 minutes, his movements shifting, becoming more complex. Analysis progress. 11%. Still not enough. It was driving him crazy. He couldn't exactly knock on the door and ask for a private lesson. This guy was clearly a powerhouse. He was stuck playing the long game. Night hit. Back in the suite, Dexter was doing the usual thing, helping Mira from her wheelchair to the bathroom when he saw she was stained red. She was in her period. He went bright red. He couldn't help it. Mira just stared at him, then let out a dry laugh. Why are you so red? I'm the one who should be red, aren't I? Dexter's jaw set. He didn't say a word, so he went inside, picked a pad, and fixed it to a pair of panties and helped her in it. Then took her where she needed to go and walked out to the living room. He was still angry. He was still bitter. And the way she teased him didn't make it better. It just made things feel weird. He could feel Celine and Lyra watching him from the bedroom, but he didn't care either. He'd had enough. He grabbed the room key and walked out the door, needing to get away from the suffocating quiet. At 7 p.m. he was back at his post. The old man was there again, moving through the same strange, fluid forms. Dexter watched, focused as the system worked its magic. Analysis progress. 17%. When the old man went inside, Dexter sighed and turned to leave. He didn't see the old man pause at the glass door, watching him with a sharp, amused glint in his eyes. Inside the suite, a young woman's voice drifted out. "Grandfather, are you intentionally teaching that boy?" The old man stroked his beard, looking down at the empty garden. "No." The girl arched an eyebrow. He chuckled. "It took you a year to learn the first stage. No way that brat gets it in 3 days. I'm just bored." "You're playing with people again," she said with a sigh. "He caught my interest," the old man laughed. "And he's persistent. If he can steal this from just watching, he's earned it. If not," he shrugged, "then he's not worth the worry." When Dexter got back to the room, he sat on the couch, exhausted. The suite was quiet, but as he sat there, he heard it, tiny, jagged spikes of mana. He focused. It was as if someone was cultivating. Are the girls cultivating in the bedroom? If they truly are cultivating with shattered meridians, it would be incredibly painful, just like trying to force water through a rusted pipe. It hurt, it was dangerous, and their progress was probably almost zero. They should have been resting, but they were sitting there, pushing through the agony, trying to put themselves back together. Have they changed? Dexter shook his head and smiled. He felt it was ridiculous. They wouldn't give up on killing themselves just like that. He went to say something, but he stopped. Tomorrow, he thought. We'll deal with tomorrow. He lay back, closed his eyes, and drifted off to the sound of them fighting for every inch of progress. The next morning it was 7 a.m., and the old man was already out there. Dexter was back, eyes locked on the balcony. The system was buzzing, the numbers creeping up, 19%, 20%, 21%, when the old man just stopped. He didn't finish the move. He just tilted his head and stared right at the tree where Dexter was resting. Dexter's heart dropped into his stomach. He wasn't that well hidden. The old man raised a finger. "Come here." Dexter pointed at his own chest, stunned. The old man rolled his eyes, took a breath, and just stepped off the balcony. 5 stories. Dexter's eyes popped open, but the old man didn't hit the ground like a sack of bricks. He landed like he was stepping off a curb. No sound, no impact, just a light tap of his sandals. He walked over to the hedge, looking at Dexter with a dangerous smile. "Interesting," he said, his voice sounding like gravel. He looked Dexter up and down, and for a second Dexter felt like he was being X-rayed. "A mere C-rank affinity. And yet you're trying to steal my technique." The old man's smile went cold. The air suddenly felt like it was pressing down on Dexter's shoulders. "Tell me, boy," the old man whispered, "are you not afraid of dying? Tell me, boy, are you not afraid of dying?" Dexter's eyes blinked as he felt a weight land on his shoulder. Even with his strength, he felt his knee almost buckling, and an illusion of an angry god with blue burning flames appeared behind the man. Dexter's throat constricted and he opened his mouth, but before a single word could leave his lips, his expression changed instantly. A sudden sharp sensation shot through his mind. It was like an ice pick driving deep into his skull. His frost sense, the ability that connected him to Celine's unique energy. Celine. She was having another episode. Dexter's pupils contracted. His entire body went rigid for half a second. The old man noticed the change immediately but said nothing, only watching with curious eyes. Without even bothering to answer the old man's question, Dexter abruptly turned around. "Please stay here. I'll be right back." And then, like the pressure the old man was putting on him was nothing more than paperweight, he vanished. Boom! His body exploded forward with terrifying speed. The floor tiles beneath his previous position cracked from the sudden release of force. Using flame burst, Dexter shot through the hotel pathways like a meteor. The mana around his legs combusted and propelled him forward in violent bursts. The polished hotel corridors became a blur around him. Golden wall lamps streaked past like lines of fire. Several customers walking nearby only felt a gust of scorching wind sweep past them. One woman's dress fluttered wildly. A man's hat flew off his head and tumbled down the hallway. They froze in shock, their eyes wide and mouths hanging open. "What was that?" one of them shouted. But Dexter was already gone. He ignored everything. The surprised gasps, the confused shouts, all of it faded into background noise. He pushed more mana into flame burst. The technique roared to life with even greater intensity. His body accelerated even faster. The air around him rippled with heat. His brain rapidly processed things and he realized the elevator would be too slow. He immediately changed direction and sprinted straight for the stairway. His right shoulder slammed into the stairwell door, bursting it open without slowing down. His footsteps struck the stairs like explosions. Bang, 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 bang. In seconds, he reached the hotel room. Bang! And the moment Dexter stepped inside, cold air slammed into his face like a wall. The temperature had dropped so low that his skin prickled with frost. The room had turned into an ice chamber. Frost covered the walls in thick white layers. The windows were frozen solid, completely covered with ice crystals spreading in spiral patterns. The carpet crunched under his boots. The entire bed was buried under layers of ice crystals that glittered in the dim light. And on top of the bed, Celine was convulsing violently. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably as freezing energy leaked from her skin in visible waves. Her face was pale as death. Her lips were blue. Her fingers clawed at the frozen sheets. Frost spread outward from her body with every convulsion, creeping across the bed and up the walls. At the side of the bed sat Mira in her wheelchair. Beside her was Lyra, her smart glasses resting over her eyes. The AI was writing the sounds it could hear to the best of its abilities. Both girls stared at Celine with furrowed brows, worry evident on their faces. Dexter acted instantly. His right hand erupted into crimson flames. The fire roared to life, casting dancing shadows across the frozen walls. The berserk flame demon bloodline activated fully, flooding his veins with lava. The flames rapidly melted the thick ice covering parts of the room. Steam immediately rose into the air, filling the space with a thick fog. Without hesitation, Dexter reached into his pocket and pulled out the suppressant serum, took her arm and injected the serum and injected the liquid into her bloodstream. Slowly, the violent shaking stopped. Celine's convulsing body gradually relaxed. Her breathing turned soft as the frost spreading throughout the room began receding, pulling back toward her body. She fell asleep. Her face, which had been twisted in pain, softened into peace. Dexter exhaled deeply. That was too close. He activated his bloodline further and heat waves spread through the room in turning the remaining frost into water and then into steam. Within moments, the bed had completely dried and the temperature turned normal. Dexter carefully covered Celine with several thick blankets. He tucked the edges around her shoulders. He paused as he stared at her stunning face. Her silver hair spread out across the bed. She looked both angelic and also fragile buried under all that fabric. Suddenly, her eyes fluttered open, and she looked directly at Dexter. For a moment, his breath caught in his throat. But he then relaxed when he remembered she was blind. But she definitely knew he was still there. He inhaled and left the bed to turn to Mira and Lyra. Both girls were staring at him silently with an unreadable expression. The room fell silent for several seconds. Finally, Dexter spoke. His voice was calm but flat. "If you two are hungry, I can call room service. I can order food for you." Mira quietly shook her head. "I'm not hungry." Lyra's glasses flickered. The words automatically displayed across the lenses. Strangely, the foodie Lyra also shook her head. Dexter raised an eyebrow in surprise. She had almost finished the entire hotel's food this morning and afternoon. What's wrong now? He didn't bother to ask. He turned around, preparing to leave. The old man was still waiting downstairs. But suddenly, a very soft voice sounded behind him. So soft he almost thought he imagined it. "We're sorry." Dexter froze. His hand stopped just before reaching the door handle. For a long moment he did not move. He did not even breathe. The words echoed in his mind. repeating over and over. He slowly turned around. His expression was unreadable. His voice was quiet, careful. "What did you say?" Then, Lyra spoke again, this time louder. Her voice was still soft, but there was strength behind it now. A strength that had not been there before. "We're sorry." Dexter stood still. He looked at Lyra, then at Mira. Both girls were looking at him directly, not avoiding his gaze. Did I hear wrong? For a moment he genuinely thought he had misheard. He had been cold towards them throughout their stay here since they didn't care for him or themselves. He would only take care of them, earn rewards from the system and grow stronger. After all, they had also remained silent toward him. They had not tried to bridge the gap. So what changed? Then Mira lowered her head. Her dark red hair fell forward as she spoke quietly. "We are sorry for everything. And thank you." The words made Dexter more emotional than he had preferred to be. Inside him, countless emotions surged at once, like a dam breaking. All the feelings he had suppressed came flooding back. He wanted to complain. He wanted to yell. He wanted to ask them why they gave up so easily. He wanted to remind them how lucky they were. They had lived normal lives for years before losing everything. They had seen the sky. They had walked on their own feet. They had experienced the world. Meanwhile, some people were born blind. Some were born crippled. Some were born deaf. Some never once had the chance to experience life properly, not even for a single day. He wanted to say all of that. He wanted to make them understand how precious their lives were. But somehow, those simple words erased all his anger.